In a packed Manhattan courtroom, tech billionaire Victoria Hale stands alone. Her entire legal team has mysteriously vanished just minutes before trial. As cameras flash and the judge prepares to proceed, an unexpected voice breaks the silence. A quiet courthouse janitor, Daniel Reeves, steps forward and declares he will defend her. No one knows that beneath his worn uniform lies a brilliant attorney who disappeared from the legal world years ago. Follow the story to the end, hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The courtroom gallery buzzed with predatory energy. Journalists crammed shoulder to shoulder along the mahogany benches, their phones raised like weapons, documenting every flicker of movement. Camera crews jockeyed for position against the back wall, lenses trained on the defense table where Victoria Hale sat utterly alone. She looked smaller than the headlines suggested. The woman who'd built Hale Technologies from a college dorm room into a multi-billion-dollar clean energy empire now wore a simple navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun that did nothing to hide the exhaustion carved into her face. Her hands rested flat on the table, not quite steady. The prosecution table, by contrast, overflowed with bodies and confidence. 8 attorneys in matching charcoal suits shuffled documents with choreographed precision. At their center sat Malcolm Briggs, lead prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, a man whose conviction rate had earned him profiles in the Times and whispers about a judgeship. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching Victoria with the patient satisfaction of a cat outside a mouse hole. Judge Patricia Stern entered from chambers at precisely 9 o'clock, her black robe sweeping behind her. She was 63, silver-haired, with a reputation for running her courtroom like a military operation. No nonsense, no delays. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The gallery rose in a wave of rustling fabric and shuffling feet. Victoria stood alone at the defense table, the empty chairs beside her screaming their absence. Judge Stern settled into her seat, surveying the room with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She glanced at the defense table, then at the clock on the wall. Her jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Miss Hale," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Where is your legal team?" Victoria's throat moved as she swallowed. "Your Honor, I don't know." A ripple of whispers swept through the gallery. Phones tilted, capturing the moment. "You don't know?" Judge Stern's eyebrows rose. "Your trial begins in—" She consulted her watch. 4 minutes, and you're telling me you have no representation?" "They were supposed to be here." Victoria's voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite suppress. "I spoke with lead counsel last night. Everything was— We were ready." Malcolm Briggs stood, his movement smooth and unhurried. "Your Honor, if I may, the people have been prepared for this trial for months. We have witnesses scheduled, exhibits prepared. If the defense is attempting to delay—" "I'm not delaying anything," Victoria cut in, louder than she intended. Her hands curled into fists on the table. "I want this trial to proceed. I'm innocent. But my attorneys are not here," Judge Stern finished. She removed her reading glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Ms. Hale, I'm sympathetic to your situation, but this court operates on a schedule. I cannot hold this trial hostage to your lawyer's incompetence or, frankly, whatever game they're playing." "It's not a game, Your Honor. Something's wrong. They wouldn't just—" "Your Honor, if I may." A new voice, quiet but clear, came from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. A man stood near the gallery doors, still gripping the handle of a rolling mop bucket. He wore dark gray coveralls with a courthouse janitorial service patch on the chest. Mid-40s, maybe. Tall and lean, with dark hair going silver at the temples and eyes that didn't match the humble slump of his shoulders. He had the kind of face that blended into backgrounds. Pleasant enough, unmemorable. The sort of person you'd pass in a hallway and forget immediately. "Excuse me?" Judge Stern's voice could have frozen water. The man released the mop bucket and walked forward, his work boots quiet on the marble floor. Camera operators swung their equipment to follow him. The gallery erupted in confused muttering. "My name is Daniel Reeves, Your Honor. I'm licensed to practice law in the state of New York, bar number 4728915. I'd like to request permission to represent Ms. Hale in this matter." The courtroom exploded. Journalists shouted questions. The bailiff moved forward, hand on his radio. Malcolm Briggs shot to his feet, his face darkening. Your Honor, this is absurd. Silence! Judge Stern's gavel cracked like a gunshot. The noise died, but the tension remained, thick enough to choke on. She fixed Daniel with a stare that had withered seasoned attorneys. Mr. Reeves, you are a janitor in this building. Yes, ma'am. And you claim to be a member of the New York Bar? I am, Your Honor, though I haven't practiced in some years. Some years. She leaned forward. How many years exactly? 7, Your Honor. Another wave of whispers. Judge Stern raised her hand for silence without looking away from Daniel. And in those 7 years, you've been cleaning toilets? Among other things, yes. Your Honor, this is a farce, Malcolm Briggs interjected. The defense cannot swap in some courthouse custodian at the last minute and expect, Mr. Briggs, I will determine what is and is not a farce in my courtroom. Judge Stern's tone could have stripped paint. She turned back to Daniel. Approach the bench, both of you. Daniel walked forward with the kind of calm that came from either confidence or resignation. Victoria stared at him like he'd materialized from thin air. As he passed the prosecution table, Malcolm shot him a look of pure contempt. At the bench, Judge Stern kept her voice low enough that the microphones wouldn't catch it. Mr. Reeves, I don't know what you're doing, but if this is some kind of stunt, it's not, Your Honor. Daniel met her gaze without flinching. Ms. Hale needs representation. I'm qualified to provide it. If you'd like to verify my credentials with the Bar Association, I will. She gestured to her clerk, who was already typing rapidly on a computer. In the meantime, Ms. Hale, do you wish to accept Mr. Reeves as your attorney, bearing in mind that he is, apparently, a janitor who hasn't practiced law in 7 years? Victoria looked at Daniel for a long moment. Her options were written plainly on the judge's face. Accept this stranger or face one of the best prosecutors in New York alone. Not much of a choice. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, I accept. Judge Stern's clerk looked up from her computer, nodded once. The bar number checked out. The judge sighed, a sound of deep judicial exhaustion. Very well. Mr. Reeves, you have exactly 10 minutes to consult with your client before we proceed. And if I discover you've misrepresented yourself in any way, I will hold you in contempt and have you disbarred so fast your head will spin. Are we clear? Crystal, Your Honor. Then get to work. Daniel stepped back from the bench and pulled out the chair beside Victoria. She watched him sit, her expression caught somewhere between desperate gratitude and absolute terror. Who the hell are you? She whispered. Someone who knows how to try a case. He pulled a yellow legal pad from somewhere inside his coveralls, along with a pen. We don't have much time. Tell me what you're charged with. Securities fraud, market manipulation, conspiracy. Her voice shook. They're saying I artificially inflated Hale Technologies' stock price while selling off my personal shares, that I defrauded investors of over $200 million. Did you? She flinched like he'd slapped her. No. Then who did? I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out for months. My legal team was supposed to... She stopped, her face crumpling slightly. Why would they abandon me? Right before trial. Daniel's pen moved across the pad. How many lawyers were working your case? 6, plus paralegals, investigators. All from the same firm? Yes, Blackwell and Shore. They're one of the best in the city. And they all disappeared this morning? I got a call from the senior partner's assistant at 7:30. She said there had been an emergency, a conflict of interest they couldn't discuss, that I should find new representation immediately. Victoria's hands twisted together. I tried calling everyone. No one would touch this case on zero notice. And now you. Why are you doing this? Daniel looked at her for the first time since sitting down, really looked at her. She was scared, yes. But underneath the fear was something sharper. Anger. The kind that came from betrayal. Because everyone deserves a defense, he said simply. Even billionaires. Before she could respond, Judge Stern's gavel fell. Time's up. Are we ready to proceed? Daniel stood. The defense is ready, Your Honor. Malcolm Briggs rose from the prosecution table, and the predatory gleam in his eyes had sharpened considerably. This was better than he'd hoped. A defendant represented by a janitor? The media would eat it alive. The conviction would be that much sweeter. Your Honor, the people are ready to present our opening statement. Proceed, Mr. Briggs. Malcolm stepped out from behind the table, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. He addressed the jury, 12 men and women, selected over 3 grueling days of voir dire, their faces carefully neutral. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next few days, you're going to hear a lot of numbers, billions of dollars, millions of shares, hundreds of trades. He paused, letting the weight settle. But this case isn't really about numbers. It's about trust, and it's about greed. The defendant, Victoria Hale, built her fortune on a promise: clean energy, a better future. She stood in front of investors, shareholders, the American public, and she told them that Hale Technologies was going to change the world. And people believed her. They bought stock in her company. They bet their retirement savings, their children's college funds, on her vision. But while Victoria Hale was telling the world how bright the future looked, she knew something they didn't. She knew that Hale Technologies was failing. She knew that the revolutionary battery technology her company claimed to have developed didn't actually work. She knew that the stock price, which had climbed to nearly $300 a share, was built on lies. And what did she do with this knowledge? Did she come clean? Did she warn the investors who had trusted her? Malcolm shook his head slowly. No, she sold. While the stock was still high, while people still believed in her, Victoria Hale quietly offloaded nearly 40% of her personal holdings, $217 million. She took that money and she walked away, leaving thousands of investors holding worthless paper when the truth finally came out. He turned, gesturing toward Victoria. The defense may try to tell you this was all a misunderstanding, a complicated business situation gone wrong. But the evidence will show you something much simpler. This is a case about a woman who lied to get rich, and when her lies were about to catch up with her, she grabbed as much money as she could and left everyone else to burn. At the end of this trial, I'm going to ask you to hold Victoria Hale accountable for those lies, for that betrayal, for that greed. Thank you. Malcolm sat down, satisfaction radiating from his posture. Judge Stern turned to the defense table. Mr. Reeves? Daniel stood. He didn't button his coveralls or smooth down his hair. He just stood there, this janitor in work clothes, and walked toward the jury box. The jurors watched him with undisguised skepticism. A few looked embarrassed on his behalf. I'm not going to lie to you, Daniel began, his voice quiet enough that people had to lean forward to hear. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this woman must be desperate if she's letting someone like me defend her. And you're right. She is desperate. Because 3 hours ago, 6 experienced attorneys abandoned her for reasons no one can explain. Because she's about to be tried for crimes she didn't commit. Because sometimes, desperate times call for desperate measures. He paused, meeting the eyes of each juror in turn. But let me tell you what desperation looks like from where I'm standing. Desperation is when the government spends 18 months investigating someone and can't find any evidence of intent. So instead, they build a case on coincidence and speculation. Desperation is when a prosecutor needs a high-profile conviction so badly that he's willing to destroy an innocent woman's life to get it. Mr. Briggs just told you this case is about trust and greed. I agree, but not the way he means it. This case is about whether you can trust a prosecution that's built on cherry-picked emails and decontextualized trades. This case is about the greed of corporations that wanted to eliminate their competition and found a willing prosecutor to do their dirty work. Victoria Hale did sell stock. That's not a crime. CEOs sell stock all the time for dozens of legitimate reasons. The prosecution wants you to believe she did it because she knew her company was failing. But the evidence will show you that every single trade was pre-scheduled, approved by the board, and publicly disclosed. Nothing hidden, nothing secret. They want you to believe she lied about her technology, but you'll hear from engineers from independent testing labs that Hale Technologies batteries work exactly as advertised. The company hit a manufacturing delay, something that happens in every tech startup, and competitors seized the opportunity to spread rumors and tank the stock price. Mr. Briggs talked about all the investors who lost money. And yes, people lost money. That's tragic. But losing money in the stock market doesn't mean someone committed a crime. It means the market did what markets do. And it means that someone, maybe several someones, wanted you to think Victoria Hale was responsible so you wouldn't look too closely at who actually benefited from destroying her company. Daniel stepped back from the jury box. I'm just a janitor. I push mops and empty trash cans, but I know how to read evidence, and I know how to spot a setup when I see one. By the end of this trial, you will too. Thank you. He sat down. Victoria was staring at him with something that might have been hope or might have been shock. It was hard to tell. Judge Stern checked her watch. We'll take a 15-minute recess before the prosecution calls its first witness. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. The courthouse bathroom had seen better decades. Cracked tile, a mirror clouded with age, the persistent smell of industrial cleaner. Daniel splashed cold water on his face, gripping the edge of the sink hard enough to make his knuckles white. 7 years. 7 years since he'd stood in front of a jury. 7 years since he'd argued a case, cross-examined a witness, done anything that resembled actual legal work. And now here he was, defending a woman he'd met 20 minutes ago in the highest-profile trial New York had seen in a decade. The door opened. Victoria slipped inside, glanced around the empty bathroom, then leaned against the wall. This is the men's room, Daniel said without looking up. I don't care. She crossed her arms. I need answers. Real ones. Who are you? Why are you doing this? And how the hell did a courthouse janitor just deliver an opening statement that good? Daniel turned off the water, dried his face with a paper towel. When he met her eyes in the mirror, something in his expression made her take a step back. 7 years ago, I was a defense attorney, he said quietly. One of the best in the city, if you believe the press clippings. I specialized in impossible cases, the ones other lawyers wouldn't touch. And I won. A lot. What happened? I took a case I shouldn't have taken, defended a man I believed was innocent. He turned to face her. He wasn't. He was a monster. And 2 weeks after I got him acquitted, he killed 3 people, including my wife. The air went out of the room. Victoria's hand rose to her mouth. I couldn't practice after that, Daniel continued, his voice flat. Couldn't walk into a courtroom without seeing her face. Couldn't argue for anyone without wondering if I was setting another monster free. So I walked away. Changed my name, found a job where I didn't have to think, didn't have to decide who deserved justice and who didn't. Daniel, I don't want your sympathy. He cut her off, but not unkindly. I want you to understand what you're getting. I'm not the lawyer I used to be. I'm rusty. I'm compromised. And I'm probably going to make mistakes. Then why did you step in? He was quiet for a moment. Because I heard your lawyers abandoned you, and I heard the whispers in the hallway about how the fix was in, how you were going down whether you were guilty or not, and I thought, maybe one more case, maybe one more person who actually deserves a defense. You think I'm innocent? I think you're being railroaded. There's a difference. He moved toward the door, then paused. But yeah, I think you're innocent. I've seen enough guilty people to know what they look like. You're scared and you're angry, but you're not guilty. Victoria followed him into the hallway. The bailiff was already calling people back to the courtroom. What do we do now? She asked. Now? Daniel glanced at her. Now we go back in there and I cross-examine whoever Briggs puts on the stand. And you sit quietly and try not to look terrified. That's your strategy? For the next hour? Yeah. He pushed open the courtroom doors. After that, we'll figure out the rest. Malcolm Briggs's first witness was exactly what Daniel expected. A forensic accountant from the SEC named Dr. Richard Chen, mid-50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of precise manner that made juries trust him implicitly. Malcolm led him through his credentials. PhD in economics, 15 years with the Securities and Exchange Commission, testimony in over 40 fraud cases. Then came the meat. Dr. Chen, did you have occasion to review the trading activity in Victoria Hale's personal brokerage accounts during the period from January to March of last year? I did. What did you find? Chen adjusted his glasses. Ms. Hale executed a series of trades over that 3-month period in which she sold approximately 12 million shares of Hale Technologies stock. The total value of those sales was $217 million. A few jury members wrote in their notebooks. Good. They were paying attention. And what was the stock price during this period? It fluctuated, but it averaged around $283 per share. Dr. Chen, What happened to Hale Technologies' stock price after Ms. Hale completed these sales? In April of last year, Hale Technologies announced a delay in bringing their new battery technology to market. Within 2 weeks, the stock price dropped to $94 per share. As of today, it trades at around $60. Malcolm paused, letting the jury do the math. So if Ms. Hale had waited just 1 month to sell her shares, she would have lost approximately 2/3 of that $217 million. That's correct? And based on your analysis, did Ms. Hale know about the manufacturing delays when she made these sales? Daniel stood. Objection. Calls for speculation. Judge Stern nodded. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Briggs. Malcolm barely broke stride. Dr. Chen, did your investigation uncover any communications between Ms. Hale and her chief technology officer regarding the battery delays? Yes. There were several emails exchanged in January of last year. What did those emails discuss? The CTO, Marcus Webb, informed Ms. Hale that the manufacturing process was encountering significant obstacles. He estimated it would take at least 6 additional months to resolve the issues. Malcolm pulled a document from his table, had it marked as evidence. I'm showing you People's Exhibit 3. What is this? Chen examined it. It's an email from Marcus Webb to Victoria Hale, dated January 14th of last year. Can you read the highlighted portion for the jury? Victoria, we need to talk. The battery yield rates are nowhere near what we promised investors. We're looking at a major delay, possibly longer than 6 months. This is going to hurt us badly when it goes public. The jury shifted in their seats. One woman in the back row frowned. And when was this email sent? January 14th. When did Ms. Hale begin selling her stock? January 16th, 2 days later. Malcolm turned to the jury, letting that sink in. No further questions, Your Honor. Daniel stood, gathering his notes. He approached Dr. Chen with the casual air of someone asking directions, not cross-examining a government witness. Dr. Chen, you said Ms. Hale sold stock over a 3-month period, correct? Yes. Not all at once? No. The sales were spread out over multiple transactions. And were these sales scheduled in advance? Chen hesitated. Some of them were part of a 10b5-1 trading plan. A 10b5-1 plan, can you explain what that is for the jury? It's a prearranged trading plan that allows corporate insiders to sell stock without violating insider trading laws. The plan is set up in advance, and the trades execute automatically according to the plan's parameters. So these aren't spontaneous decisions to sell, they're planned months ahead of time? In some cases, yes. How many of Ms. Hale's sales were part of this prearranged plan? Chen consulted his notes. Approximately 60%. Daniel nodded slowly. 60%. So more than half of the sales Mr. Briggs just described were scheduled before Ms. Hale could have known about any manufacturing delays? The plan was established in September of the previous year, yes. And the remaining 40%, the sales not part of the plan, were those unusual in any way? I'm not sure what you mean. Well, you've testified in 40 fraud cases. You've analyzed hundreds of insider trading schemes. In your experience, when corporate executives commit securities fraud, how do they usually operate? Do they spread sales out over months and publicly disclose every transaction, or do they dump stock quickly and quietly? Malcolm stood. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, Dr. Chen's experience is directly relevant to whether this trading pattern is consistent with fraudulent intent. Judge Stern considered. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Dr. Chen. Chen shifted in his seat. Typically, fraudulent trading involves larger, less transparent transactions. Would you say Ms. Hale's trading pattern here is consistent with fraud? I can't make that determination. I can only present the data. But the data shows publicly disclosed trades, many of which were prearranged months in advance, correct? Yes. Let's talk about that email from Marcus Webb, the one Mr. Briggs had you read. Did you review Ms. Hale's response to that email? I did. What did she say? Chen pulled out another document. She wrote, Marcus, I need a full analysis by end of week. If we're facing delays, I want solutions, not excuses. Schedule a board meeting. We're not hiding this from investors. Someone in the gallery coughed. Daniel let the silence stretch. She wanted to tell the investors? That's what the email says. Did she tell them? The company issued a press release in February disclosing potential delays in the product timeline. Before the stock crash? Yes. Dr. Chen, in your experience investigating fraud cases, do criminals usually volunteer bad news to the public before they have to? Malcolm stood again. Objection? Speculation. Withdrawn. Daniel smiled slightly. No further questions. He sat down. Victoria leaned over, whispering, "That was good." "Oh, that was a warm-up," he murmured back. "Briggs knows his case is circumstantial. He's going to bring in someone who will testify about intent, probably an email or a recorded conversation taken out of context." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do." He was right. Briggs's next witness was Sarah Lim, Victoria's former executive assistant, young, maybe 28, dressed in a conservative gray suit that looked rented. She kept her eyes down as she was sworn in. Malcolm's examination was surgical. How long had she worked for Victoria? 3 years. What were her duties? Managing Victoria's calendar, screening calls, handling correspondence. Did she overhear conversations between Victoria and other executives? Sometimes. "Ms. Lim, I want to direct your attention to a conversation you overheard on January 23rd of last year. Where were you?" "In Ms. Hale's office. I was dropping off some documents." "Who was present?" "Ms. Hale and her chief financial officer, David Park." "What did you hear?" Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. "Mr. Park was saying they needed to be careful about how they disclosed the battery problems, that if they weren't strategic about it, the stock price would collapse." "What did Ms. Hale say?" She said, "Then we make sure we're positioned first. I'm not taking the hit for this." The courtroom went dead silent. Malcolm let it hang there for a long moment. She said, "We make sure we're positioned first. I'm not taking the hit for this?" "Yes." "What did you understand that to mean?" "Objection," Daniel said. "Calls for speculation." "Your Honor, Ms. Lim can testify to her own understanding of what she heard." Judge Stern nodded. "I'll allow it. Answer the question." Sarah swallowed. I thought she meant she was going to sell her stock before everyone else found out how bad things were." Malcolm nodded sympathetically, as if Sarah's interpretation pained him. No further questions. Daniel stood. He didn't approach the witness stand immediately. Instead, he stayed at the defense table, studying Sarah like she was a puzzle. "Ms. Lim, how did you lose your job at Hale Technologies?" Sarah blinked. I was let go." "When?" "March of last year. Right after the stock crashed." "Around that time, yes." "Why were you fired?" She shifted. "They said it was budget cuts." "Did you believe that?" Malcolm rose. "Objection. Relevance." "Your Honor, the witness's credibility is directly relevant." "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Lim." Sarah's jaw tightened. "No, I didn't believe it." "Why not?" "Because I was good at my job, and because I'd complained about some things I'd seen." "What things?" "Harassment. The CFO, Mr. Park, he made inappropriate comments. I reported it to HR." Daniel nodded slowly. "And then you were fired?" "Yes." "Did you sue for wrongful termination?" "No." "Why not?" "I couldn't afford it." "But you could afford to cooperate with the SEC's investigation?" Her face flushed. "They approached me." "Did they offer you anything in exchange for your testimony?" "They said if I cooperated, they'd consider dropping any charges against me." "Charges? What charges?" Sarah looked at Malcolm, who kept his expression carefully neutral. They said I might have been involved in the fraud, that I'd helped Ms. Hale conceal information." "So you were facing potential prosecution, and the SEC offered to make that go away if you testified against Victoria Hale?" "They said if I told the truth." "Ms. Lim, when you overheard this conversation between Ms. Hale and Mr. Park, did you hear the entire discussion?" "Most of it." "Most of it? So you might have missed some context?" "I guess." "When Ms. Hale said, 'We make sure we're positioned first,' did she say positioned to do what?" Sarah hesitated. "I'm not sure." "You're not sure?" But you testified under oath that you thought she meant she was going to sell her stock. That was your interpretation, correct? Yes. An interpretation you came to after you were fired, after you were threatened with prosecution, and after you were offered immunity in exchange for cooperating. I'm telling the truth. Miss Lim, isn't it possible that when Ms. Hale said positioned, she meant positioned to handle the public disclosure? To have a communication strategy ready? I don't know. Maybe. But that possibility didn't occur to you when the SEC asked for your statement. I told them what I heard. You told them what they wanted to hear. Daniel's voice wasn't harsh, just tired. No further questions. As Sarah stepped down, Victoria leaned close. She's lying. That conversation wasn't about selling stock. It was about how to announce the delays without causing a panic. I know, Daniel said, but the jury heard what they heard. We need to give them something else to think about. Like what? Like who actually benefited from your company's collapse? Because it wasn't you. Judge Stern called for lunch recess. The gallery emptied in a rush of bodies and raised voices. Journalists sprinted for the exits, already typing on their phones. By the time Daniel and Victoria made it to the hallway, the headlines were probably already written. They found a small conference room on the third floor, empty except for a table and 6 chairs. Victoria paced while Daniel pulled out his legal pad, reviewing notes. They have nothing, she said, her voice sharp with frustration. Nothing concrete, just innuendo and a fired assistant with an axe to grind. They don't need concrete. They need to tell a story the jury believes. Daniel tapped his pen against the pad. Right now, their story is simple. You knew the company was in trouble. You sold your stock before the public found out. You made $200 million. That story makes sense to people. But it's not true. Truth and sense aren't the same thing. He looked up at her. We need to complicate their narrative. Make the jury ask questions. Like what questions? Like why your legal team vanished this morning. Like who actually knew about the manufacturing problems before you did. Like who benefited when your stock crashed. He stood, moving to the window. Outside, the city churned with its usual chaos. Tell me about your competitors. Victoria stopped pacing. What about them? Clean energy is a cutthroat business, right? Lots of money at stake. Hundreds of billions. Hale Technologies was positioned to dominate the battery market. Our technology was years ahead of anyone else's. Who would lose the most if you succeeded? She thought about it. Titan Energy. They're a conglomerate. Fossil fuels. Traditional energy infrastructure. They've been fighting clean energy legislation for decades. Would they benefit from your collapse? Immensely. With Hale Technologies out of the picture, the transition to clean energy slows down, maybe stops entirely. Titan gets to keep printing money from oil and gas for another generation. Daniel wrote the name down. Anyone else? Apex Solutions. They're another battery manufacturer, but their technology is inferior. They couldn't compete with us on performance, so they competed on price. When our stock crashed, they picked up a lot of our contracts. How much did their stock go up after yours went down? Victoria's eyes widened slightly. I don't know. I'd have to look. Look, we need numbers. He turned back to her. What about your CFO, the one Sarah Lim mentioned, David Park? What about him? She said he was harassing her. You believe that? Victoria's jaw tightened. David's ambitious, sometimes too ambitious, but I didn't think... Did he have access to information about the battery delays before you did? He would have, yes. He was in charge of budgeting for the manufacturing division. Did he sell any stock? I don't know. Find out. Daniel moved back to the table, started writing a list. We have 72 hours before this trial is over, one way or another. Briggs will rest his case tomorrow, maybe the day after. Then we put on our defense, but we can't just react to what he throws at us. We need to investigate. Investigate what? I don't have investigators. I don't have a legal team. I have you and a mop bucket. Then we use what we have. He met her eyes. I need access to your company's servers, your emails, your financial records, everything. The prosecution already went through all of that. The prosecution was looking for evidence you committed fraud. I'm looking for evidence someone else did. He tore off the sheet of paper, handed it to her. Can you get me access remotely tonight? She scanned the list. Employee records, trading data, internal communications, vendor contracts. Technically, yes, I still have administrator credentials, but if anyone finds out, they won't. We'll be careful. He checked his watch. 40 minutes left in the lunch break. We need to talk about your testimony. I'm not testifying. Victoria said, you said it yourself. The prosecution's case is circumstantial. If I testify, Briggs will tear me apart. He'll twist everything I say, make me look guilty even when I'm telling the truth. It's safer to say nothing. Daniel shook his head. You're right that he'll come at you hard, but the jury needs to hear your side. They need to see you as a person, not just a defendant. I won't do it. Then we're probably going to lose. The words hung between them. Victoria's face went pale, then flushed with anger. You don't know that. I know juries. I know how they think. Right now, you're a rich CEO who maybe committed fraud. That's not sympathetic. But if you testify, if you tell them about building your company from nothing, about believing in clean energy when everyone said it was impossible, about how someone set you up, then you become human, vulnerable, someone worth saving. Or I become a liar who's trying to manipulate them. That's the risk. He didn't sugarcoat it. But staying silent is a bigger risk. Victoria turned away, staring at the wall. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've spent my entire life building something that matters, something that could actually change the world. And in 6 months, it's all been destroyed. My company, my reputation, my freedom. And you want me to stand up in front of those people and beg them to believe me? I want you to stand up and fight. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Okay. I'll testify, but not yet. Not until we know more about who's behind this. Agreed. We have time. Daniel gathered his notes. Let's get through this afternoon first. They headed back to the courtroom. As they walked down the hallway, Daniel's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowned at the screen. What is it? Victoria asked. Nothing, just... He stared at the message for a moment, then pocketed the phone. Nothing, but his expression said otherwise. The afternoon session brought more prosecution witnesses. An investment banker who testified about the timing of Victoria's stock sales. A journalist who'd written about Hale Technologies' battery problems. An industry analyst who explained how the stock crash had devastated retail investors. Daniel cross-examined each one methodically, poking holes where he could, but the damage accumulated. By the time Judge Stern called it a day at 5 o'clock, the jury looked convinced. In the hallway outside, reporters mobbed them. Microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. Ms. Hale, do you regret selling your stock? Mr. Reeves, why did you come out of retirement to take this case? Is it true your entire legal team quit this morning? Daniel pushed through without comment, keeping Victoria close. They made it to the elevator, doors closing on a wall of shouted questions. Inside, Victoria sagged against the wall. That was brutal. First day's always the worst. Daniel hit the button for the basement level. Tomorrow will be better. You don't sound convinced. I'm not. He pulled out his phone, checked the message again. His jaw tightened. What is that? Victoria asked. You've looked at your phone a dozen times since lunch. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he turned the screen toward her. The message was simple. Just a photo. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, walking out of a school building. Dark hair and pigtails, a purple backpack, smiling. Underneath, 2 words. Be careful. Victoria's face went white. That's your daughter? Emma, yes. Someone's threatening her? Someone's reminding me what I have to lose. He pocketed the phone, his expression locked down tight. I need to make a call. Wait here. He stepped off the elevator in the basement, walked to a quiet corner near the maintenance rooms, dialed a number he hadn't called in years. It rang 3 times. Then a woman's voice, wary. Hello? Karen? It's Daniel. Silence. Then, what do you want? I need you to take Emma somewhere safe tonight. What are you talking about? I can't explain right now, but someone sent me a picture of her leaving school. Someone's watching her. Jesus, Daniel, what did you get yourself into? A case. It's complicated, but I need to know she's safe. She's always safe with me. That's more than I can say for when she's with you. The barb hit home, as intended. Karen had remarried 2 years ago, moved to Connecticut with Emma. Daniel saw his daughter every other weekend when he could make the drive. It wasn't enough, but it was what the divorce decree allowed. "Please," he said quietly, "just for a few days. Take her to your sister's place upstate. I'll explain everything when this is over." Karen was quiet for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, "Fine, but you owe me an explanation, a real one." "I know, thank you." He hung up, stood there in the basement silence. 7 years ago, he'd walked away from the law to protect what was left of his family, and now, trying to do the right thing for once, he'd put his daughter in danger anyway. The elevator doors opened. Victoria stepped out, looking uncertain. "Everything okay?" "No, but it will be." He straightened, pushing the fear down into a locked box where it couldn't interfere. "Come on, we have work to do." They left through the courthouse's underground parking garage, avoiding the press. Daniel's car was a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and a missing hubcap. Victoria looked at it like it might collapse. "This is what you drive?" "Janitors don't make billionaire money." He unlocked the doors. "Get in." They drove through Manhattan traffic, Daniel navigating by muscle memory. Victoria watched the city slide past, her expression distant. "Why did you really take this case?" she asked suddenly. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "I told you. You told me part of it. But there's something else. Something you're not saying." He was quiet for several blocks. Then, "When my wife died, I promised myself I'd never let another innocent person suffer because I was too much of a coward to act. I broke that promise for 7 years. Hid. Pretended the world didn't need people willing to fight for what's right." He glanced at her. "I saw you this morning, standing alone at that table, and I saw myself. Abandoned, betrayed, facing impossible odds. And I thought, maybe this is why I'm still here. Maybe this is the case I was supposed to take. That's a lot of pressure to put on one trial." "Yeah." He smiled without humor. "Welcome to my therapy." They pulled up outside a modest apartment building in Queens. Daniel cut the engine, nodded toward the entrance. "This is where I live. We can work from here without anyone watching." Victoria followed him up 3 flights of stairs to a small apartment that smelled like coffee and old books. 1 bedroom, a cramped kitchen, a living room dominated by a desk covered in files and papers. The walls were bare except for a single framed photo, Daniel with a woman and a young Emma, all 3 of them laughing. "Your wife?" Victoria asked softly. "Rebecca, yeah." Daniel moved to the desk, started clearing space. "She was a social worker, spent her life helping people no one else cared about. She would have liked you, I think." "Why?" "Because you're trying to fix something broken. That's what she did too." He booted up an ancient laptop, gestured for Victoria to sit. "Okay, show me how to access your company's servers." She walked him through it. VPN credentials, security tokens, administrator backdoors. Within 15 minutes, they were in. Daniel started pulling files, emails from the week before the stock crash, trading records for every executive at Hale Technologies, vendor contracts, board meeting minutes. "What are you looking for?" Victoria asked. "Patterns, anomalies, anything that doesn't fit the prosecution's narrative." They worked through the night. Coffee turned to energy drinks, turned to exhaustion. Victoria fell asleep on the couch around 2 a.m, leaving Daniel alone with the files. He found it at 3:30, an email thread between David Park, the CFO, and an external consultant named Marcus Webb, the same CTO who'd sent Victoria the warning about battery delays. But these emails predated that warning by 2 months, and they weren't about manufacturing problems. They were about stock options. Daniel read through the exchange twice, making sure he understood. Then he pulled up the SEC trading records. David Park had sold nearly $5 million worth of Hale Technologies stock in February, right before the crash. But he'd purchased the stock just a month earlier, using options that had been granted to him as part of his compensation package. Options that Victoria hadn't known about because they'd been approved by the board in a session she'd missed due to a conference in Berlin. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. Someone had set this up. Someone had orchestrated the whole thing. The battery delays, the leaked information, the stock crash. and they'd made sure Victoria took the fall. He grabbed his phone, started dialing Victoria's lawyer, then remembered she didn't have one. He was it. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten. In a few hours, they'd be back in court, and Daniel would have to figure out how to prove what he'd found without getting Victoria, or himself, killed in the process. He looked at the photo on the wall. Rebecca smiled back at him, frozen in a moment of happiness that felt like another lifetime. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," he said quietly to the empty room. Then he went back to work. Daniel woke with his head on the desk, neck screaming in protest. Sunlight cut through the window blinds in harsh slats. His laptop screen had gone dark. The coffee beside him had formed a cold, oily skin. He checked his phone. 6:42. Court started at 9. Victoria was still asleep on the couch, curled into herself like she was trying to disappear. Her hair had come loose from its bun, falling across her face. For a moment, she looked vulnerable in a way the courtroom would never see. Daniel stood, joints popping, and moved to the kitchen. Started a fresh pot of coffee. The smell brought Victoria awake. She sat up slowly, disoriented. "What time is it?" "Early. We have time." He poured 2 mugs, handed her one. "I found something last night." That woke her up completely. She took the coffee, came to the desk. Daniel pulled up the email thread, walked her through it. Her face went from confused to shocked to furious in the span of 30 seconds. "David did this? My CFO orchestrated the whole thing? Him and someone else. These emails reference a third party, someone they call the principal. They never use a name, but whoever it is had enough pull to manipulate your board and plant false information with the SEC." Victoria set her mug down hard enough to slosh coffee onto the desk. "I trusted David. I gave him that position when he was just a junior analyst. I mentored him. And he sold you out for $5 million. Daniel clicked through to the trading records. "Look at the timing. He bought options in December, sold the stock in February, right before the crash. He knew exactly when to get out because he helped orchestrate when the bad news would go public. Can we use this in court?" "That's the problem. I obtained this evidence without a warrant. Technically, you gave me access, but the prosecution will argue it's fruit of the poisonous tree. Judge Stern might exclude it." "Then what good is it?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, thinking. "We use it to guide our investigation. We know David's dirty. We know there's a third party involved. Now we need to find proof we can actually present in court. How? We put David on the stand and make him tell us." Victoria looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "He's a prosecution witness. Briggs isn't going to let us anywhere near him." "He doesn't have to. We subpoena David ourselves. Call him as a defense witness." "Can we do that?" "If we move fast enough, yeah." Daniel grabbed his phone, started composing a message to the court clerk. "I'll file the subpoena this morning before we go in. With any luck, we can get David on the stand by tomorrow. And if Briggs objects?" "He will. But Judge Stern has to allow us to present a defense. As long as David's testimony is relevant, and it absolutely is, she'll let it happen." Victoria wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, staring into it like it held answers. "I keep thinking about yesterday, that assistant, Sarah Lim, the way she looked at me when she testified, like I was the one who ruined her life, not David. She believes what she said. That's what makes her dangerous. Briggs found someone with a grudge and gave her a story that fit. But it's not the truth. Truth's flexible when you're scared and angry." Daniel stood, moved to the window. The street below was waking up. Delivery trucks, early commuters, a man walking 3 dogs. Normal people living normal lives. Sarah lost her job, maybe her career. She needed someone to blame. Briggs handed her a villain. So what do we do about her? We don't. We focus on David. He's the weak link. Push him hard enough, he'll crack. Victoria joined him at the window. "You sound like you've done this before." "I have. Different case, different life." He didn't elaborate. "We should get ready. Traffic's going to be hell." They took turns in the tiny bathroom. Victoria borrowed one of Rebecca's old blazers from the closet. Daniel hadn't been able to throw them away even after all these years. It fit her well enough, made her look professional, composed, not like someone who'd spent the night on a stranger's couch. On the drive back to Manhattan, Victoria asked, "Your daughter, is she safe?" Yeah, my ex-wife took her upstate. She'll be fine. I'm sorry you had to do that. Daniel shrugged. Not your fault. Whoever sent that photo wanted me rattled, wanted me thinking about Emma instead of the case. Is it working? He didn't answer immediately. I'm thinking about both. They parked in a garage 2 blocks from the courthouse, walked the rest of the way. The morning was cold, clouds threatening rain. Outside the building, the press had multiplied. Twice as many cameras, 3 times as many reporters. The janitor-lawyer angle had gone viral overnight. Daniel kept his head down, guided Victoria through the chaos. Someone shoved a microphone in his face. Mr. Reeves, is it true you haven't practiced law in 7 years? Mr. Reeves, why did your wife's killer go free? He stopped walking, turned slowly toward the reporter who'd asked the second question. A young guy, maybe 25, with slicked back hair and a predatory grin. What did you say? The reporter's grin widened. Your wife, Rebecca Reeves, killed by a client you defended, Stephen Merrick. You got him acquitted, and 3 weeks later he murdered her and 2 others. Is that why you became a janitor? Guilt? Victoria grabbed Daniel's arm before he could move. Don't! That's what they want! She was right. The cameras were focused, hungry for reaction. Daniel forced himself to breathe, to relax his clenched fists. No comment, he said quietly, and kept walking. Inside the courthouse, away from the circus, Victoria said, I'm sorry. That was cruel. It was accurate. Daniel's voice was flat. Stephen Merrick did kill my wife. I did get him acquitted. And yeah, I've been living with that guilt ever since. It wasn't your fault. You were doing your job. Was I? Or was I so focused on winning that I ignored what was right in front of me? He stopped at the elevator, pressed the button. I knew he was dangerous, something in the way he talked about the victim, the way he smiled when the prosecution made mistakes. I knew. But I wanted the win. I wanted to prove I was the best. And Rebecca paid for my ego. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside, alone. If you believe that, Victoria said slowly, then why are you defending me? Why take another case where you might be wrong again? Because I'm not wrong about you. I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between guilt and a setup. You're being railroaded, and I'm not going to let it happen. He met her eyes. Besides, I owe someone a debt. Might as well be you. The courtroom was already filling when they arrived. Daniel filed the subpoena with the clerk, who read it with raised eyebrows but accepted it without comment. Judge Stern would rule on it during a break. Malcolm Briggs noticed them, frowned. He said something to one of his assistants, who scurried off. Daniel knew what was coming: objections, motions, legal warfare. But that was for later. Right now they had to survive the morning session. Judge Stern took the bench at 9 sharp. Mr. Briggs, call your next witness. The people call Marcus Webb, Your Honor. Daniel's attention sharpened. Webb, the CTO, who'd sent the warning email about battery delays. The same one who'd been communicating with David Park in those hidden emails. Webb took the stand looking every bit the tech genius. Early 40s, rumpled button-down shirt, glasses held together with tape at one hinge. He had the distracted air of someone more comfortable with circuits than people. Briggs walked him through his credentials. PhD in electrical engineering from MIT. 15 years in battery technology. Chief Technology Officer at Hale Technologies since its founding. Mr. Webb, you were responsible for developing the revolutionary battery technology that Hale Technologies promised to investors, correct? Yes. Can you describe that technology for the jury? Webb launched into an explanation that involved lithium-ion cells, energy density, and thermal management. Half the jury's eyes glazed over within 30 seconds. Daniel made a note. Webb was brilliant but terrible at communicating with normal humans. Briggs let him talk for a minute, then gently steered him back. In simple terms, Mr. Webb, was this battery better than anything else on the market? Potentially, yes. The theoretical performance was exceptional. Theoretical. What does that mean? Webb shifted uncomfortably. It means the design worked on paper and in lab testing, but scaling up to mass production proved challenging. When did you first realize there were problems with mass production? November of the year before last. We were getting yield rates of only 30%, far below what we needed for commercial viability. What did you do when you discovered this? I informed Ms. Hale immediately. What was her reaction? Webb hesitated. She was concerned. She asked how long it would take to fix the problems. What did you tell her? I estimated 6 to 8 months, possibly longer. And what did Ms. Hale say to that? She said we couldn't afford that kind of delay, that investors were expecting results. Briggs nodded slowly. Did she ask you to misrepresent the technology's readiness? Daniel stood. Objection, leading. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Briggs. What, if anything, did Ms. Hale ask you to tell investors about the battery's status? Webb's discomfort was visible. She asked me to emphasize the positive aspects, to focus on the potential rather than the current limitations. Did you interpret that as a request to mislead investors? Objection calls for speculation. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Webb. Webb looked at Victoria, then away. I didn't know what to think. I'm an engineer, not a businessman. I just told her the technical truth, that we had problems that would take time to solve. And did Ms. Hale disclose those problems to investors? Not immediately. There was a press release in February, but by then the problems were much worse than we'd initially thought. Briggs paused, let that sink in. Mr. Webb, did there come a time when you learned that Miss Hale had sold a significant portion of her personal stock? Yes. In March, after the stock price collapsed, I found out she'd been selling for months. How did that make you feel? Objection, relevance. Judge Stern considered. I'll allow it. Answer the question. Webb's jaw tightened. I felt betrayed. I'd spent years developing this technology. I believed in it. And while I was working 100-hour weeks trying to solve the manufacturing problems, Ms. Hale was cashing out. No further questions, Your Honor. Daniel stood, gathering his notes. Webb watched him approach with the wary expression of someone expecting an attack. Mr. Webb, you said you informed Ms. Hale about the manufacturing problems in November, correct? Yes. And she asked how long it would take to fix them? Yes. Did she ask you to stop working on fixes? No. Did she cut your budget? No. Did she interfere with your work in any way? Webb frowned. No, but in fact, didn't she approve additional funding for the manufacturing division in December of that year? Yes, but that was before what, Mr. Webb? Before the problems got worse, or before you told her they were worse? I informed her of the worsening situation in January. Daniel pulled out a document. I'm showing you Defense Exhibit A. What is this? Webb examined it. It's a budget allocation memo? From when? January 10th. What does it authorize? An additional $12 million for manufacturing R&D. Did Ms. Hale sign this authorization? Yes. Daniel turned to the jury. So 10 days after you told Ms. Hale the problems were getting worse, she approved $12 million to help you fix them. Does that sound like someone who is giving up on the technology? I suppose not. You suppose not. Mr. Webb, let's talk about that press release in February, the one where Hale Technologies disclosed the battery delays. Who drafted that release? The communications department. Did Ms. Hale review it before it went public? Yes. Did she make any changes? Webb consulted his memory. She made it more detailed, added specific timeline estimates. She wanted investors to understand exactly what we were facing. So she made the disclosure more transparent, not less? I guess you could say that. I could say that because it's true, isn't it, Mr. Webb? Daniel moved closer to the witness stand. You testified that you felt betrayed when you learned Ms. Hale had sold stock. But did you know at the time that 60% of those sales were part of a prearranged trading plan? I learned that later. And the remaining 40%, did you know those sales were publicly disclosed in SEC filings? Yes. So there was nothing secret about her stock sales? No, but the timing, let's talk about timing. Daniel pulled up another document on his laptop, displayed it on the courtroom screen. This is an email you sent to David Park, the CFO, on January 5th. Can you read the highlighted portion? Webb's face went pale. I don't remember this email. The court will remember it for you. Read it, please. Webb swallowed. It says, David, I need to know when we're going public with the delay announcement. My stock options vest next month and I need to plan accordingly. The courtroom went silent. You had stock options, Mr. Webb? Yes, part of my compensation package. And those options vested in February? Yes. The same month Hale Technologies announced the battery delays? Yes. Did you sell your stock after it vested? Webb's hands clenched on the witness stand railing. I exercised some options, yes. How much stock did you sell? I don't recall exactly. Let me refresh your recollection. According to SEC filings, you sold $800,000 worth of Hale Technologies stock in February. Is that correct? That sounds right. And you sold it before the delay announcement went public? By a few days, yes. Daniel let that hang in the air. So while you were testifying about feeling betrayed by Ms. Hale's stock sales, you had done essentially the same thing, sold stock before the bad news became public. It's not the same. I didn't have insider information. You were the CTO. You had more insider information than anyone except Ms. Hale herself. I didn't manipulate the timing. Didn't you? You sent that email to David Park asking when the announcement would go public. Why did you need to know that, if not to time your stock sales? I was just planning my finances. By making sure you sold before the crash? Daniel's voice hardened. Mr. Webb, isn't it true that you and Mr. Park coordinated your stock sales to maximize profit before the company's value collapsed? No, that's not. Isn't it true that you provided Mr. Park with technical information he could use to manipulate the timeline of the announcement? Objection! Briggs was on his feet. Your Honor, counsel is badgering the witness with unfounded accusations. Your Honor, these questions go directly to witness bias and credibility. Judge Stern frowned. I'll allow limited questioning on this line, but tread carefully, Mr. Reeves. Daniel nodded. Mr. Webb, you testified that you believed in the battery technology, that you worked 100-hour weeks to fix the problems. But if you truly believed the technology would succeed, why did you sell your stock? Webb's mouth opened and closed. I needed the money. I have expenses. $800,000 worth of expenses? I don't have to justify my financial decisions to you. Actually, in this courtroom, you do. Daniel moved back to the defense table, retrieved another document. Mr. Webb, did you remain employed at Hale Technologies after the stock crash? Yes, for a few months. And then? I left to join another company. Which company? Webb's jaw tightened. Apex Solutions. The name landed like a bomb. Daniel saw several jurors sit up straighter. Apex Solutions. That's one of Hale Technologies' direct competitors, isn't it? They work in a similar space, yes. And when did you start working for them? June of last year. How much does Apex pay you, Mr. Webb? Objection, relevance. Your Honor, the witness's potential bias is highly relevant. I'll allow it. Answer the question. Webb looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. My salary is $400,000 annually plus stock options. That's nearly double what you made at Hale Technologies, isn't it? Yes. And Apex is battery technology. Is it competitive with what you developed at Hale? It's different. Different how? Less advanced, but more commercially viable. More commercially viable because Hale Technologies' manufacturing problems opened up market share that Apex could capture. I suppose that's one way to look at it. Mr. Webb, did Apex approach you about employment before or after the battery delay announcement? The question caught him off guard. I'm not sure. You're not sure? This was less than a year ago. Surely you remember when a major competitor offered you a job. It was around the same time. Before or after? Before. Late January, I think. Daniel nodded slowly. So you were in discussions with Apex Solutions, a company that would benefit enormously from Hale Technologies' failure. At the same time, you were deciding when to sell your stock and when to go public with the delay announcement. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Mr. Webb? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you had every incentive to make sure Hale Technologies failed. You'd already lined up a better job with a competitor. You'd already sold your stock. And you were the one person who could control the narrative about whether the battery technology actually worked. The technology didn't work, not at scale. Or maybe you made sure it didn't work. Maybe you sabotaged your own research so Apex could swoop in and take over the market. That's insane. Is it? You had motive, opportunity, and expertise. You could have manipulated the manufacturing process, fed false information to Ms. Hale, coordinated with Mr. Park to crash the stock price at just the right time. And then you walked away with a lucrative job at the company that benefited most from the disaster. Webb's face was red. I did no such thing. I'm an engineer, not a criminal. Yet here you are, testifying against the woman who gave you a chance to change the world, while working for the competitor who's now profiting from her destruction. Objection! Briggs was nearly shouting. Your Honor, Mr. Reeves is engaging in pure speculation with no evidentiary basis. Sustained. Mr. Reeves, do you have any actual evidence to support these accusations? Daniel met Judge Stern's eyes. Not yet, Your Honor, but I will. Then save it for when you do. Move on. Daniel turned back to Webb. One last question, Mr. Webb. When you joined Apex Solutions, did you bring any proprietary information from Hale Technologies with you? No, I signed a confidentiality agreement. Did you follow it? Of course. Then how did Apex develop a competing battery technology so quickly? Their product launched just 4 months after you joined. That's an impossibly short development timeline unless they had access to Hale's research. I can't speak to Apex's development process. Can't or won't? Daniel didn't wait for an answer. No further questions. Webb practically fled the witness stand. Briggs requested a brief recess to confer with his team, and Judge Stern granted it. In the hallway, Victoria grabbed Daniel's arm. That was incredible. You destroyed him. I raised questions. That's different from providing answers. Daniel rubbed his eyes. The lack of sleep was catching up with him. But yeah, the jury's thinking now. That's something. Do you really think Webb sabotaged the research? I think he had reason to. Whether he actually did it, I don't know. But the jury doesn't need certainty. They just need reasonable doubt. His phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Emma's safe, but Daniel, she's scared. She keeps asking why we had to leave. What do I tell her? He typed back, tell her Daddy's helping someone. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll explain everything soon. Karen's response came immediately. You'd better. Daniel pocketed his phone. When he looked up, Victoria was watching him. Your daughter doesn't understand why you're doing this. No, but maybe someday she will. He started walking back toward the courtroom. Come on, Briggs is going to come out swinging. He was right. When court resumed, Briggs called a rebuttal witness, an engineer from an independent testing lab who testified that Hale Technologies' battery had failed multiple safety tests, that the technology wasn't just delayed, it was fundamentally flawed. Daniel cross-examined aggressively, getting the engineer to admit that all new technologies fail initial tests, that failure is part of the development process. But the damage was done. The jury had heard failed safety tests, and that was what they'd remember. By the time Judge Stern broke for lunch, the momentum had shifted back to the prosecution. Outside the courthouse, Daniel and Victoria found a small diner 2 blocks away. They sat in a corner booth away from windows and ordered sandwiches neither of them ate. We're losing, Victoria said quietly. We're not winning, Daniel corrected. There's a difference. That's a distinction without meaning. No, it's not. Losing means the jury's already decided. We're just in the process of them convincing themselves. We haven't lost yet. But we're not exactly winning either. Daniel picked at his sandwich. The subpoena for David Park got approved during the break. Judge Stern's letting us call him tomorrow. Victoria looked up. Really? Briggs objected like hell, but she ruled that we have the right to present witnesses relevant to your defense. David's relevant. What are you going to ask him? Everything. His stock trades, his communications with Webb, his relationship with this mysterious principal mentioned in the emails. I'm going to push him until something breaks. And if nothing breaks? Then we're back to you testifying, putting your story directly in front of the jury. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that, about what you said, that they need to see me as human. Yeah. What if they don't like what they see? Daniel met her eyes across the table. Then we lose. But at least you'll have fought. At least you'll have told the truth. The truth hasn't exactly been winning us points so far. Truths like that, messy, complicated. Juries prefer simple stories, but sometimes, if you tell the truth well enough, they'll choose complicated over simple. He pushed his sandwich away. I had a case once. Guy accused of armed robbery. He did it, technically, but the victim was his brother, and the robbery was him taking back money his brother had stolen from their dying mother. The prosecution had video, witnesses, everything. Clean case. What happened? I put my client on the stand. Let him tell the whole story, every messy, painful detail. The jury came back not guilty in 40 minutes. Not because the truth was pretty, but because it was real. They could see the difference. You think my truth is real enough? I know it is. Daniel pulled out cash for the bill. But we need more than truth. We need leverage. Something that forces the people behind this to back off. How do we get that? We dig deeper. Tonight, we go through every file we can find on David Park and Marcus Webb. Every email, every text, every financial record. There's a trail. There's always a trail. We just have to find it. They left the diner, headed back to court. On the sidewalk, a man in a dark coat stood watching them. When Daniel made eye contact, the man turned and walked away. "Did you see that?" Victoria whispered. "Yeah. We're being followed." "Should we?" "No. Let them watch. Let them think we're scared." Daniel kept walking, his pace steady. Fear makes people sloppy. They'll make a mistake eventually. And if they don't, then we make one for them. The afternoon session brought more technical witnesses, an SEC investigator who walked through Victoria's trading patterns, a forensic accountant who explained how insider trading schemes typically operate, each one building a wall of circumstantial evidence that looked damning from a distance but crumbled under close examination. Daniel chipped away at each witness, finding small inconsistencies, raising questions. It wasn't enough to win, but it was enough to keep fighting. By 5 o'clock, when Judge Stern adjourned for the day, Daniel's head was pounding and his throat was raw from talking. But they'd survived another day. In the hallway, Malcolm Briggs approached. His expression was smug. "Quite a performance in there, Reeves. Almost made people forget you're just a janitor playing dress-up." Daniel stopped walking. "Something I can help you with, Malcolm?" "Just wanted to give you some friendly advice. This case is over. You know it. I know it. Your client's going to prison. The only question is whether you go down with her for obstruction when we find out how you got access to those emails you've been waving around. Those emails are legally obtained evidence. Are they? Because I've got a team of investigators who'd love to verify that." Briggs stepped closer, lowered his voice. "You're in over your head. Walk away now. Let your client plead out. We'll recommend leniency. She'll do 5 years, maybe less with good behavior. And if I don't, then she'll do 20. And you'll spend the rest of your pathetic career explaining why you threw away your second chance on a lost cause." Daniel held Briggs's stare. "You done?" "For now." "Good. Because I've got work to do." He turned to Victoria. "Let's go." They walked away, leaving Briggs standing alone in the hallway. Outside, the rain had started, cold, steady, the kind that soaked through clothes within minutes. They ran to Daniel's car, slid inside, dripping. "He offered a plea deal," Victoria said. "Yeah." "Should I take it?" Daniel started the engine, cranked the heat. "Do you want to spend 5 years in prison for something you didn't do?" "No, but I also don't want to spend 20. "Then we keep fighting." He pulled out of the parking space, merged into traffic. "Briggs is scared. He wouldn't have approached us if he wasn't. That performance in there, trying to intimidate us, offering a deal, that's desperation." He didn't seem desperate. No, he seemed confident. There's a difference. Confident people don't need to threaten. They just win. Daniel navigated through the rain-slicked streets. "We're getting to him. Whatever we're doing, it's working." They drove to Daniel's apartment in silence. Inside, they shed wet coats, made coffee, and settled back into the work. Files spread across the desk. Emails filling the laptop screen. The patient, methodical process of building a defense. Around 8 o'clock, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then changed his mind. "Hello?" Static on the line. Then a voice, distorted by some kind of filter. "Mr. Reeves, I hope you're enjoying your brief return to the legal profession. Daniel's blood went cold. He hit the speaker button so Victoria could hear. Who is this? Someone who's been watching your career with interest, both the rise and the fall. Tell me, how does it feel to be back in the arena? What do you want? I want you to understand something. Victoria Hale is guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. The jury will convict. Nothing you do will change that. Then why are you calling? Because you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. You're asking questions, following threads, making people nervous. Good. They should be nervous. A laugh, cold and mechanical. You still think you're the hero, don't you? The crusading attorney fighting for justice? But you're not a hero, Daniel. You're a man who got an innocent woman killed because he was too arrogant to see the monster he was defending. Daniel's hand tightened on the phone. And now you're doing it again. Defending someone who doesn't deserve it. Someone who's going to destroy you just like Stephen Merrick destroyed your wife. Victoria's not guilty. That's what you said about Merrick. How did that work out? Victoria reached for the phone, but Daniel shook his head. Listen to me very carefully, the voice continued. Drop this case. Walk away. Go back to pushing your mop and keeping your head down. Do that, and your daughter stays safe. Keep fighting, and, well, accidents happen, even in quiet Connecticut suburbs. The line went dead. Daniel stood frozen, the phone still in his hand. Victoria was saying something, but he couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. Emma. They'd threatened Emma. Daniel, Victoria's voice cut through. Daniel, look at me. He focused on her face. We call the police, she said. Right now. That was a threat. They can trace the call. Protect your daughter. No. What do you mean, no? If we call the police, they'll know we're scared. They'll know it's working. He set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. We keep going. We find who's behind this, and we burn them to the ground. Daniel, they threatened your daughter. I know. His voice was steady now, cold. But Karen already took Emma somewhere safe. These people are bluffing. They want me rattled. They want me to make mistakes. Maybe you should make mistakes. Maybe you should quit. This isn't worth your daughter's safety. If I quit, they win. They get away with framing you, with corrupting the legal system, with everything, and they'll do it again to someone else. Someone who doesn't have a broken-down ex-lawyer willing to fight. Victoria stared at him. You're insane. Probably. He turned back to the laptop. But I'm not quitting. They worked until midnight, piecing together David Park's financial history. The picture that emerged was damning. A man living well beyond his means with gambling debts and expensive tastes. Exactly the kind of person who might be tempted by a conspiracy that promised millions. At 12:30, Daniel found what he was looking for. A series of wire transfers from an offshore account to David's personal bank. $2 million paid in installments over 6 months. There, he said, pointing at the screen. That's the payoff. That's proof David was being compensated by someone outside the company. Victoria leaned over his shoulder. Can you trace where it came from? Not easily. Offshore accounts are designed to hide ownership, but the timing tells us something. Look, the first payment came in November, right when the battery problems were first discovered. The final payment came in March, after the stock crashed. So whoever paid him was paying for results. Exactly. And if we can prove that connection in court, we blow this whole thing wide open. How do we prove it? Daniel sat back, thinking. We put David on the stand tomorrow. We show him these transfers and we ask him to explain them. He'll either lie, which we can catch him in, or he'll panic and tell the truth. And if he does neither, then we pray the jury's smart enough to see through him. They went to sleep around 2, Victoria on the couch again, Daniel at the desk with his head on his arms. The work was never really done, but exhaustion finally won. Daniel dreamed of Rebecca. She was standing in the courtroom watching him cross-examine a witness he couldn't see. When he turned to ask her something, she was gone. Just an empty chair and the echo of a voice he'd never hear again. He woke at dawn to his phone buzzing. Text from Karen. 2 men were at Emma's school yesterday, asking about her. I called the police. Daniel, what the hell is going on? His hands were shaking as he typed back, Stay where you are. Don't tell anyone where you went. I'll explain everything tonight. Victoria was awake, watching him from the couch. Your daughter? Someone went to her school. Jesus. Daniel stood, moved to the window. Outside, the city was waking up. Delivery trucks, early joggers, people going about their lives while his was falling apart. "We end this today," he said quietly. "One way or another. We get David on that stand and we break him. No more waiting, no more patience. Today." Victoria joined him at the window. "What if we can't break him?" "Then I testify." "You?" "They threatened my daughter. They dredged up my wife's murder. They're trying to intimidate me into quitting. That means they're scared of what I might do." He turned to face her. "So I'll do it. I'll testify about the threats, about the conspiracy, about everything, and let Briggs try to discredit me. Let him try to make a jury believe that I'm making this all up. That's risky. Everything about this case is risky. At least this way, we control the narrative." They got ready in silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down like a physical force. Today would determine everything, win or lose, freedom or prison, justice or corruption. In the car, heading back to Manhattan for the third day, Victoria said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not quitting, for fighting even when it would be easier to walk away." Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because it's right. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Maybe not a big one." He allowed himself a small smile. "But yeah, a little." They parked, walked through the gauntlet of reporters, entered the courthouse one more time. David Park was already there, sitting in the gallery with an expression of barely concealed contempt. When he saw Daniel, his lip curled. Daniel stared back until David looked away. The game was on. Judge Stern called the court to order at 9:15, 15 minutes late, because Malcolm Briggs had spent the morning filing emergency motions to block David Park's testimony. All of them denied. The judge looked irritated, which meant Daniel had about 30 seconds of goodwill before her patience ran out. "Mr. Reeves, call your witness." Daniel stood. "The defense calls David Park." David rose from his seat in the gallery with the confidence of someone who'd been expecting this. He was younger than Daniel had pictured from the emails. 38, maybe 40, with perfectly styled hair and a suit that cost more than Daniel made in 3 months as a janitor. He took the oath without hesitation, settled into the witness chair like he owned it. Malcolm Briggs sat at the prosecution table with his arms crossed, watching. He tried to claim Park as a prosecution witness to prevent Daniel from calling him, but Judge Stern had seen through that maneuver. Now Briggs could only watch and hope his carefully constructed case didn't collapse. Daniel approached the witness stand with his yellow legal pad, the same one he'd been using since day one. David's eyes tracked him with barely concealed contempt. "Mr. Park, you're the Chief Financial Officer of Hale Technologies, correct?" "I was. I resigned 3 months ago." "Why did you resign?" David's smile was practiced, smooth. "The company was struggling after the stock collapse. I felt it was time to move on to new opportunities." "New opportunities? What are you doing now?" "I'm CFO at Meridian Capital. It's a private equity firm." "Congratulations. That must pay well." Objection? Relevance. Briggs stood half-heartedly, like he knew it wouldn't work but had to try. "Your Honor, Mr. Park's financial situation is directly relevant to his credibility and potential bias." "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Park." David shifted slightly. "I'm well compensated, yes." "How well? Give us a number." "My salary is $650,000 annually, plus performance bonuses." One of the jurors, a middle-aged woman in the front row, wrote that down with a sharp stroke of her pen. Daniel saw it, filed it away. "That's quite an increase from your Hale Technologies salary, isn't it?" "It's a larger company." "Actually, Meridian Capital has fewer than 40 employees. Hale Technologies had over 2,000. So it's not really about company size, is it?" David's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking direct questions." Daniel consulted his notes. "Mr. Park, during your time at Hale Technologies, did you ever sell company stock?" "Yes. Executives are allowed to sell stock as part of their compensation." "How much stock did you sell between January and March of last year?" "I don't recall the exact amount." Daniel pulled out a document, had it marked as an exhibit. "Let me refresh your memory. According to SEC filings, You sold $4.2 million worth of Hale Technologies stock during that period. Does that sound correct? David barely glanced at the document. If the records say so. When did you purchase this stock? I exercised options in December of the prior year. So you bought low in December, sold high in February, just before the stock crashed. That's fortunate timing. I don't control market conditions. No, but you did control when certain information became public, didn't you? As CFO, you were involved in decisions about when to disclose the battery manufacturing delays? I participated in those discussions, yes. And you sold your stock before that disclosure was made? David's expression didn't change. The disclosure was made in February. My stock sales occurred throughout January and February. Some before the announcement, some after. But the majority before? I'd have to review the exact dates. Daniel pulled up another document on the courtroom screen. I'll save you the trouble. According to this breakdown, you sold $3.8 million worth of stock before the February announcement and only $400,000 after. That's 90% of your sales made while the public still believed Hale Technologies was thriving. Again, I don't control market timing. But you did control information timing. You knew the announcement was coming. You knew it would tank the stock price, so you got out first. Briggs stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Reeves. Daniel turned away from the witness stand, moved toward the jury. Mr. Park, you mentioned you participated in discussions about disclosing the battery delays. Who else was in those discussions? The executive team, Ms. Hale, Marcus Webb, our legal counsel, communications director. Did anyone in those discussions suggest delaying the announcement to give executives time to sell their stock? No, of course not. No one suggested it? Not even obliquely? No. Daniel pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons. I'm going to play a recording for you, Mr. Park. This is a board meeting from January 21st of last year. Listen carefully. The courtroom speakers crackled to life. Voices, slightly muffled but audible. Victoria's voice came first, tense and frustrated. We need to announce this next week. Any longer, and we're flirting with disclosure violations. Then David's voice, smooth and reasonable. I understand the urgency, Victoria, but we need to consider the optics. If we announce during earnings season, it'll get lost in the noise. Better to wait until March, make a clear, controlled statement. A pause. Then Marcus Webb's voice. March might be too late. The manufacturing team is already... David again, cutting him off. We have time, trust me on this. March is better for everyone. Daniel stopped the playback. David's face had gone pale. Mr. Park, that was your voice, correct? Yes. You were arguing to delay the announcement until March? I was suggesting optimal timing for what? For executives to maximize their stock sales before the crash? No, for strategic communications. Strategic? That's an interesting word. Daniel moved closer. You said March is better for everyone. Who did you mean by everyone? The company, the shareholders. Really? Because the shareholders who bought stock in February based on false assumptions about the company's health, was it better for them that you delayed the announcement? The announcement was made in good faith. Was it? Let's talk about good faith, Mr. Park. Do you know a company called Titan Energy? The question seemed to come from nowhere. David blinked, recovering. I'm familiar with them. They're one of the largest energy conglomerates in the world. Have you ever done business with Titan Energy? Not directly. Hale Technologies competed with them in certain markets. Competed? Past tense. What about now? Does Meridian Capital, your new employer, do business with Titan Energy? David hesitated. Meridian has diverse investments. I'm not involved in all of them. That's not an answer. Does Meridian Capital have business relationships with Titan Energy? Yes or no? Yes. What kind of relationships? Meridian has invested in several Titan subsidiary projects. How much has Meridian invested in Titan-related projects? I don't have those figures in front of me. Daniel pulled out yet another document. He'd spent half the night assembling this evidence, cross-referencing public filings and leaked financial reports. Let me help you. According to Meridian's most recent investor reports, They've committed over $400 million to Titan Energy projects. Is that accurate? That sounds approximately right. $400 million. That's a substantial relationship. Meridian is a large firm. And you're the CFO, so you'd be intimately familiar with these investments? I'm familiar with our portfolio, yes. Mr. Park, when did Meridian begin investing in Titan Energy projects? Another pause. David was trying to calculate where this was going, what trap Daniel was setting. I'd have to check the records. The first major investment was in April of last year, 1 month after Hale Technologies' stock crashed, 1 month after Clean Energy lost its most promising company, and Titan's main competitor was effectively eliminated from the market. Daniel let that sink in. Quite a coincidence. The timing is irrelevant. Investment decisions are based on what? On market opportunities? On knowing which sectors will thrive and which will collapse. Daniel moved back to the defense table, picked up a stack of papers. Mr. Park, I'm showing you a series of wire transfers from an offshore account. The account is registered in the Cayman Islands under a shell corporation called Apex Holdings. Do you recognize these transfers? David's eyes flicked to the documents. No. No? Look more carefully. These transfers went into your personal bank account. $2 million over 6 months. The first payment in November, the last in March. Ring any bells? I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know about $2 million appearing in your bank account? I receive compensation from various sources. Consulting fees, investment returns, from a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands? What kind of consulting do you do for offshore entities, Mr. Park? Briggs was on his feet. Your Honor, where is Mr. Reeves getting this information? I've seen no discovery related to offshore accounts. Mr. Reeves? Judge Stern's voice was sharp. Daniel turned to her. Your Honor, these records were obtained through legal means. Ms. Hale, as the former CEO and current board member of Hale Technologies, has access to financial records related to executive compensation and potential conflicts of interest. These transfers were flagged during an internal audit. It was a stretch, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. But Judge Stern didn't immediately shut him down. I'll allow limited questioning on this topic, but Mr. Reeves, if I find out you obtained this evidence improperly, there will be consequences. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. He turned back to David, who looked like he was trying to decide between fight and flight. Mr. Park, I'll ask again. Do you know anything about these transfers? I may have done some consulting work. I don't remember every client. You don't remember a client who paid you $2 million? I'd have to review my records. Let me help you review them. The Shell Corporation, Apex Holdings, is owned by a larger parent company. That parent company is a subsidiary of Titan Energy. Daniel let the silence stretch. So Titan Energy paid you $2 million over the exact period when Hale Technologies was collapsing. Care to explain that? David's composure was cracking. His hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. If I did consulting work for Titan, it was completely separate from my role at Hale Technologies. Was it? Because the timing suggests otherwise. The first payment came the same week you started arguing to delay the battery delay announcement. The final payment came the same week you resigned from Hale. That's not consulting. That's payment for services rendered. You're making wild accusations without evidence. I have the wire transfers. I have the timeline. I have your stock sales. I have your voice on a recording arguing to delay an announcement that would have saved investors millions of dollars. Daniel's voice rose. What I don't have is an explanation that makes you look like anything other than a corrupt executive who sold out his company for a payoff. Objection! Briggs was nearly shouting. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Mr. Reeves is badgering the witness with conspiracy theories. Your Honor, this goes directly to Mr. Park's credibility and his potential role in framing Ms. Hale. Judge Stern held up a hand. Approach the bench, both of you. Daniel and Briggs moved forward. The judge covered her microphone, kept her voice low. Mr. Reeves, you're walking a very thin line here. Do you have actual proof that Mr. Park was paid to sabotage Hale Technologies? I have proof he received money from Titan Energy during the exact period when Hale Technologies collapsed. I have proof he profited enormously from that collapse. I have proof he's now working for a company that's in bed with Titan. That's not conspiracy theory. That's motive, means, and opportunity. It's also circumstantial. So is the entire prosecution's case against Ms. Hale? Briggs leaned in. Your Honor, this is a distraction. Mr. Park isn't on trial here. Maybe he should be, Daniel shot back. Judge Stern looked between them, then made her decision. I'm going to allow this line of questioning to continue, but Mr. Reeves, you need to connect these dots more clearly. If you can't establish a direct link between Mr. Park's actions and Ms. Hale's alleged crimes, I'm shutting this down. Clear? Crystal. They returned to their positions. David looked slightly more composed, like the break had given him time to rebuild his defenses. Mr. Park, Daniel continued, did you ever communicate with anyone at Titan Energy about Hale Technologies' internal operations? No. Never? Never. Did you communicate with anyone at Meridian Capital about Hale Technologies before you joined the firm? David hesitated. I had preliminary employment discussions. When did those discussions begin? Late January of last year. The same time you were receiving payments from Titan Energy? The payments weren't from Titan, they were from a consulting client. A consulting client that happened to be owned by Titan. A consulting client that paid you more in 6 months than you made in 2 years at Hale Technologies. What kind of consulting commands that kind of money, Mr. Park? I provided strategic financial analysis. Of what? Various market sectors. Including clean energy? Possibly. Including Hale Technologies specifically? I don't recall. Daniel pulled out another document. This is an email from you to an address at Meridian Capital, dated February 3rd of last year. Can you read the subject line? David's face went white. I don't have my glasses. I'll read it for you. Hale Technologies Internal Assessment, confidential. What was in that email, Mr. Park? I don't remember. You don't remember sending confidential internal assessments of your employer to your future employer while receiving payments from their biggest investor. That email was part of my employment negotiations. It's standard due diligence. Due diligence requires you to share confidential company information without authorization. I didn't share anything that wasn't already public. The email is marked confidential. That suggests otherwise. Briggs stood again. Your Honor, unless Mr. Reeves can produce the contents of this email, its subject line is meaningless. Daniel smiled. I can produce the contents. He turned to the clerk. Defense Exhibit 12, please. The clerk pulled up the email on the courtroom screen. It was dense with financial data, projections, internal communications. And there, highlighted in yellow, was a paragraph that made the jury lean forward. Battery yield rates continue to decline. Manufacturing team estimates minimum 18-month delay before commercial viability. Recommend strategic announcement timing to minimize shareholder panic. Current projections suggest stock decline of 60 to 70% upon disclosure. Daniel let the jury read it twice before speaking. Mr. Park, did you write this? Yes, but this email is dated February 3rd. The public announcement about battery delays didn't happen until February 18th. So you sent confidential, market-moving information to an outside party 2 weeks before the public had access to it. That's not due diligence, that's insider trading. It was part of employment negotiations. I was cleared by legal. Which lawyers cleared you? Hale's general counsel. Really? Because I have a deposition from Hale's general counsel stating she never approved any such disclosure. In fact, she specifically told you in January that all communications with outside parties about company operations required board approval. Do you remember that conversation? David's hands were shaking now. I may have misunderstood. You misunderstood a direct order from the company's top lawyer. You, the chief financial officer, didn't understand basic confidentiality requirements? I was operating in good faith. Good faith? You leaked confidential information to a company that stood to profit from Hale's collapse. You received $2 million from Hale's biggest competitor. You sold $4 million worth of stock before the crash. And now you're sitting in this courtroom under oath, claiming you operated in good faith. Yes. Mr. Park, did you coordinate with Marcus Webb to manipulate the timing of the battery delay announcement? No. Did you receive instructions from anyone at Titan Energy or Meridian Capital about when that announcement should be made? No. Did you sabotage Hale Technologies' manufacturing process to ensure the battery technology would fail? Absolutely not. Daniel moved closer to the witness stand, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. Then explain this. Explain why you sold your stock before the crash. Explain why you received payments from Titan. Explain why you leaked confidential information. Explain why you're now working for a company that's making hundreds of millions betting against clean energy. Explain any of it in a way that doesn't make you look guilty as hell. David's composure finally shattered. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't manipulate anyone. I saw an opportunity and I took it. That's not a crime. That's capitalism. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Briggs looked stunned. Daniel let the words hang there for a long moment. Then quietly, an opportunity. You saw Hale Technologies failing and you saw an opportunity to profit from it? David realized his mistake, tried to backtrack. That's not what I meant. You meant exactly what you said. You saw a company in crisis, a CEO taking the blame, and you saw a chance to make millions while someone else took the fall. No, Victoria knew about the problems. She what? She approved your stock sales? She knew you were talking to Meridian? She authorized you to leak confidential information? She was in charge. She knew everything. Did she know you were receiving payments from Titan Energy? David went silent. Did she know you were sharing internal assessments with outside parties? Nothing. Did she know you were actively working to destroy the company she built? I wasn't destroying anything, David said, but his voice had no conviction left. Daniel turned to Judge Stern. No further questions. He walked back to the defense table. Victoria was staring at him with something between shock and admiration. Behind them, the gallery buzzed with whispered conversations. Briggs stood for redirect examination, but the damage was done. He tried to rehabilitate David to provide context for the wire transfers and the emails, but David had been broken. His answers were defensive, evasive. The jury watched him with open skepticism. After 20 minutes, Briggs gave up. No further questions. Judge Stern called for a recess. As the jury filed out, Daniel saw several of them glancing at Victoria with different expressions than before. Not sympathy exactly, but doubt. Reasonable doubt. It was a start. In the hallway, reporters mobbed them. Daniel pushed through without comment, but he could hear the questions, could feel the shift in narrative. Mr. Reeves, does this mean Miss Hale was framed? Is the government going to investigate David Park? What about Titan Energy's role in this? They found an empty conference room. Victoria closed the door, leaned against it. That was incredible. Daniel shook his head. That was a start. We damaged Park's credibility, but we didn't prove you're innocent. The jury's questioning the prosecution's story, but they don't have an alternative story to believe in. So what do? We give them one. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number he'd looked up that morning. It rang 4 times before someone answered. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Agent Morrison. Agent Morrison, my name is Daniel Reeves. I'm an attorney representing Victoria Hale in the securities fraud trial in Manhattan. I have evidence of a conspiracy involving Titan Energy, Meridian Capital, and several Hale Technologies executives. I need to speak with someone in your white-collar crime division immediately. There was a pause, then, hold, please. Daniel was transferred 3 times before he finally reached someone with authority. A woman named Agent Sarah Chen, who listened to his 5-minute summary without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "That's a serious allegation. Do you have documentation? Wire transfers, emails, recordings, everything. Can you send them to me? Only if you guarantee protection for my client and my family. Someone's already threatened my daughter." Another pause. Mr. Reeves, if what you're telling me is true, this is potentially the largest corporate fraud case we've seen in years. But I can't offer protection based on a phone call. I need to see the evidence. Then meet me, today, before the trial resumes tomorrow. Where? Your office. I'll bring everything. 2 o'clock. Ask for me at reception. She hung up. Daniel lowered his phone, looked at Victoria. We're going to the FBI. Is that safe? Safer than sitting here waiting for whoever's behind this to make another move. He checked his watch. We have 4 hours. I need to organize all the evidence, make copies, prepare a presentation that shows the full scope of the conspiracy. What can I do? Stay visible. Go back to your apartment, act normal. If they're watching, and they are, let them think we're rattled but not dangerous. Let them think Park's testimony was a lucky break, nothing more. Where will you be? Getting everything we found onto drives the FBI can use. Then meeting with Agent Chen. He moved toward the door. Zadi, stay by your phone. If anything happens, anything, you call me immediately. Victoria nodded. Daniel, thank you for all of this. Thank me when we win. They separated in the courthouse lobby. Victoria headed for the parking garage, flanked by 2 security guards Daniel had hired that morning with the last of his savings. He watched her go, making sure she got safely to her car, then headed in the opposite direction. His apartment felt different when he arrived. Not obviously disturbed, but wrong somehow. Like someone had been there, touching things, searching. He did a quick inventory. Nothing missing that he could see, but his laptop had been moved, just slightly. The files on his desk were in a different order. They'd been here, looking for what he knew, what he could prove. Daniel worked quickly, copying everything to 3 separate encrypted drives. Every email, every wire transfer, every recording. He made notes, cross-referenced dates, built a timeline that even a skeptical federal agent couldn't ignore. At 1:30, he grabbed the drives and headed for the FBI field office in Lower Manhattan. The building was granite and glass, imposing in the way government buildings always were. He gave his name at reception, was escorted to a conference room on the 7th floor. Agent Sarah Chen was younger than he expected, mid-30s, with sharp eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every con artist trick in the book. She shook his hand, gestured to a chair. You have 30 minutes. Convince me. Daniel plugged in his laptop, pulled up the first slide of his presentation. 3 months ago, Hale Technologies was poised to revolutionize clean energy. Today, it's a penny stock, and its CEO is on trial for fraud. I'm going to show you how a conspiracy involving Titan Energy, Meridian Capital, and corrupted executives made that happen. He walked her through everything. The wire transfers from Titan to David Park, the coordinated stock sales, the leaked emails to Meridian, the manipulation of the battery delay announcement, the payoffs, the timing, the motive. Chen took notes, asked pointed questions, remained skeptical but engaged. When Daniel finished, she sat back in her chair. This is compelling, but it's also largely circumstantial. The wire transfers could be legitimate consulting fees. The emails could be innocent employment negotiations. Could be, but add it all up, and there's only one explanation that fits. Conspiracy theories are seductive, Mr. Reeves. They make complicated situations feel comprehensible, but the simple explanation is usually correct. Maybe Miss Hale did commit fraud. Maybe Mr. Park was just an opportunist taking advantage of a sinking ship. Then explain the threats. Explain why someone sent a photo of my daughter. Explain why men showed up at her school asking questions. Chen's expression shifted slightly. When did this happen? Yesterday. My ex-wife called the Connecticut State Police. I can give you her contact information. Do that. She made another note. Mr. Reeves, I'm going to be honest with you. What you've shown me is interesting. It's worth investigating, but it's not enough to stop a federal trial that's already underway. The best I can do is open a preliminary investigation into Titan Energy and Meridian Capital's activities. If we find evidence of criminal conspiracy, we'll act on it, but that could take months. We don't have months. The trial will be over by Friday. Then you need to win in court. Use what you have. Make your case to the jury. If you're right about this conspiracy, the evidence will come out eventually. And if the jury convicts Victoria before that happens? Chen stood, gathering her notes. Then she appeals, and we provide evidence for her appeal. It's not ideal, but it's the system we have. Daniel wanted to argue, to demand immediate action, but he knew it was pointless. The FBI moved on its own timeline. They weren't going to disrupt a federal trial based on one attorney's presentation, no matter how compelling. I'm leaving these drives with you, he said. Everything's on there. Timeline, evidence, contacts, use it or don't. But if something happens to me or my client, you'll know why. Nothing's going to happen to you, Mr. Reeves. People keep saying that. I'm starting not to believe them. He left the FBI building feeling more alone than when he'd arrived. The feds would investigate eventually, but eventually didn't help Victoria now. They were on their own. His phone rang as he reached the street. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then changed his mind. What? Mr. Reeves. The filtered voice from before. I hope you enjoyed your meeting with Agent Chen. Very thorough presentation, but ultimately pointless. Daniel's blood ran cold. They'd been watching the FBI building, or they had someone inside. Either way, they knew everything. What do you want? I want you to understand that you're out of your depth. You went to the FBI. They'll investigate. In 6 months, maybe a year, they'll find some middle managers to prosecute. But the people behind this, they'll never be touched. They're too well connected, too well protected. We'll see about that. No, Daniel, you won't. Because tomorrow when you put Victoria Hale on the stand, she's going to fall apart. She's going to say things that make her look guilty. And the jury's going to convict her, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You sound worried. I'm not worried. I'm certain. This case was over before it started. We just needed to make sure everyone played their part. And you've played yours beautifully. The crusading attorney fighting the impossible fight. Very inspiring, but ultimately futile. If you're so certain, why do you keep calling? Why threaten my daughter? Why follow me to the FBI? A pause, then, insurance. We don't like surprises. You're about to get one. Daniel hung up, stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard. They were right about one thing. He was out of his depth. But being out of your depth just meant you couldn't touch bottom. It didn't mean you couldn't swim. He called Victoria. Where are you? My apartment. The security guards are with me. What happened with the FBI? They're not going to help, not in time. He started walking, not sure where he was going, just needing to move. We're on our own, which means tomorrow, you testify. You tell your story, and we pray it's enough. I'm not ready. You'll never be ready, but you're going to do it anyway. He stopped walking, looked up at the Manhattan skyline, towers of glass and steel built on ambition and ruthlessness. Victoria, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Yes. Then meet me at my apartment in 2 hours. We're going to prepare your testimony. Every question Briggs might ask, every trap he might set. We're going to go through it all until you can answer in your sleep. Okay? And Victoria, when you're on that stand, don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be the CEO or the victim or anything other than yourself. Just tell the truth. Messy, complicated, human truth. That's all we've got left. He hung up, stood there for another moment. Then he turned and headed back to his apartment, back to the work, back to the only thing that mattered. Tomorrow, they'd put Victoria on the stand. Tomorrow, they'd lay everything out for the jury. Tomorrow, they'd find out if 7 years of hiding had destroyed his ability to fight, or if somewhere underneath the janitor's uniform, the attorney he used to be was still alive. His phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Police found nothing at the school. No evidence anyone was actually asking about Emma. They think I imagined it, but Daniel, I didn't imagine it. I know what I saw. He texted back, I believe you. Stay where you are. This will be over soon. One way or another, it would be over soon. The trial couldn't last forever. The lies couldn't hold forever. Something had to break. Daniel just hoped it wasn't him. He arrived at his apartment to find Victoria already there, sitting on the steps outside his building. She looked exhausted, defeated. He sat down beside her. Tell me the truth, she said. What are our chances? Daniel thought about lying, about offering false hope, but she deserved better than that. Honestly, maybe 30%. Briggs has built a strong circumstantial case. We've created doubt, but doubt isn't always enough. Juries want to believe the government. They want to believe the system works, and we're asking them to believe in a conspiracy that sounds like something out of a movie. So we're going to lose. Maybe. Probably. He looked at her. But there's a chance, a real chance, and that's more than you had 3 days ago when you were standing alone in that courtroom. Victoria laughed, but it came out broken. 3 days ago I thought my life was over. Now I know it is. Hey, Daniel turned her to face him. It's not over. Even if the jury convicts, we appeal. We keep fighting. I met with the FBI today. They're going to investigate. It might take time, but the truth will come out. What good is truth if I'm in prison? Truth is the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that lasts. He stood, offered her his hand. Come on, let's get you ready to tell yours. They went inside, made coffee, spread documents across every available surface. For the next 4 hours, they prepared. Daniel played prosecutor, asking every hostile question he could imagine. Victoria answered, stumbled, answered again. They refined her story, found the words that conveyed truth without sounding rehearsed. By 9 o'clock, they were both exhausted. Victoria was asleep on the couch again. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at the photo of Rebecca. I hope I'm doing this right, he said quietly to the empty room, to the ghost that wouldn't let him go. I hope wherever you are, you'd be proud of this. Of me trying, at least. Rebecca's smile didn't change. It never would. She was frozen in that moment of happiness, forever untouchable by the choices Daniel made now. He thought about calling Emma, but it was too late. She'd be asleep. Instead, he sent Karen a text. Tell Emma I love her. Tell her Daddy's doing something important. Tell her I'll explain everything soon. Then he closed his laptop, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. Tomorrow, they'd make their final stand. And whatever happened after that, at least he'd fought. At least he'd tried. After 7 years of hiding, of pushing mops and avoiding the world, he'd finally stepped back into the arena. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask. Outside his window, the city never slept. Sirens in the distance, the hum of traffic, the endless churn of humanity pursuing its ambitions and desires. Somewhere out there, the people behind this conspiracy were sleeping peacefully, confident in their victory. Confident that money and power would protect them, as it always had. Daniel hoped they were wrong. He fell asleep at his desk, head on his arms, dreaming of courtrooms and justice and the thin line between the two. Morning came too fast. Daniel woke to his phone ringing, neck stiff from sleeping at the desk. He fumbled for it, saw Victoria's name on the screen. I can't do this. Her voice was tight, panicked. I can't get on that stand and let them tear me apart. Daniel checked the time, 6:47. Court started at 9. Where are you? My apartment. I've been awake all night thinking about it. Every question Briggs is going to ask, every trap he's going to set. I can't. Victoria, listen to me. You can do this. We prepared. You know your story. My story sounds like a lie even to me. How is a jury supposed to believe it? Because it's the truth. And truth has a sound to it, a feel. People recognize it even when it's messy. He stood, moved to the window. The city was waking up, indifferent to their crisis. You get on that stand and you tell them what happened. No embellishment, no trying to sound innocent, just the facts. And if that's not enough, then we tried. That's all we can control. He grabbed his jacket, headed for the door. I'm coming to get you. Be ready in 30 minutes. He hung up before she could argue, called the security team he'd hired to make sure they were still posted outside her building. They were. At least something was going right. The drive to Victoria's apartment took 20 minutes through light morning traffic. She was waiting in the lobby, dressed in a charcoal suit that made her look older, more severe. Not the image they wanted, but it was too late to change now. You look like you're going to a funeral, Daniel said as she got in the car. Maybe I am. Mine. Stop it. You're going to be fine. You don't know that. You're right. I don't. He pulled into traffic, headed toward Manhattan. But I know you're stronger than you think. I've watched you these past 4 days. You haven't broken. You haven't run. You've fought every step of the way. That's who you are. That's who the jury needs to see. Victoria stared out the window, silent for several blocks. Then quietly, my father used to tell me that the world doesn't reward good people. It rewards ruthless people. People willing to do whatever it takes. I spent my whole life trying to prove him wrong. Trying to build something that mattered without becoming someone I'd hate. You did build something that mattered. And look where it got me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I should have been more ruthless. Maybe I'd have seen this coming. Daniel shook his head. Ruthless people don't get framed for fraud. They're the ones doing the framing. You got targeted because you were a threat. Because Hale Technologies was going to change an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. You think Titan Energy would have bothered destroying you if you weren't dangerous to them? I don't feel dangerous. I feel terrified. Good. Use that. Terrified is honest. Terrified is human. The jury doesn't need you to be perfect. They need you to be real. They parked in the courthouse garage, rode the elevator in silence. The hallway outside the courtroom was already packed with reporters. Camera crews had multiplied overnight. The story had gone national. Billionaire CEO, janitor lawyer, conspiracy theories involving one of America's largest energy companies. It was cable news gold. Daniel pushed through the crowd, keeping Victoria close. Someone shoved a microphone in her face. "Ms. Hale, are you going to testify today?" "Ms. Hale, do you have any comment on David Park's testimony yesterday?" "Ms. Hale, is it true Titan Energy tried to buy out Hale Technologies before the fraud allegations?" That last question made Daniel stop. He turned to the reporter, a young woman with sharp eyes. "What did you say?" She looked surprised to be acknowledged. "I asked if Titan Energy tried to buy Hale Technologies. I've been investigating corporate filings from 2 years ago. There was a failed acquisition attempt, but it was never made public. I thought, when exactly?" "September, 2 years back. Titan offered $8 billion. The Hale Technologies board rejected it unanimously." Daniel looked at Victoria. She was pale. "You never mentioned this." "It didn't seem relevant. Companies make acquisition offers all the time. We rejected it because we didn't want to be absorbed by a fossil fuel conglomerate." "Who led the acquisition attempt?" The reporter checked her notes. "A Titan subsidiary called Meridian Capital, the same company David Park now worked for. The same company that had invested $400 million in Titan projects after Hale Technologies collapsed." Daniel's mind raced, connecting dots. This wasn't just about destroying a competitor. This was about revenge for a rejected buyout. "Thank you," he said to the reporter. "What's your name?" "Jessica Brennan. I work for ProPublica. I've been following this case from the beginning. Can I call you later? I may have information you'll want." "Absolutely." She handed him a card. Inside the courtroom, Malcolm Briggs was already at the prosecution table conferring with his team. He looked up as Daniel and Victoria entered, and something in his expression had changed, less confident, more wary. He'd seen David Park's testimony fall apart yesterday. He knew the case wasn't the slam dunk it had seemed a week ago. Judge Stern took the bench at 9 sharp. "Mr. Reeves, are you ready to call your first witness?" Daniel stood. "The defense calls Victoria Hale." The gallery murmured. Victoria stood, walked to the witness stand with her head high. She was sworn in, sat down, folded her hands in her lap. She looked small in the chair, vulnerable. Daniel hoped the jury saw it. He approached slowly, giving her time to settle. "Ms. Hale, how did you start Hale Technologies?" "In my dorm room at MIT. I was studying electrical engineering, working on a project about energy storage. I realized that battery technology was the bottleneck holding back renewable energy. If we could build better batteries, we could change everything." "What do you mean by everything?" "Solar and wind power only work when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing. You need batteries to store that energy for when it's not. But existing batteries were too expensive, too heavy, too inefficient. I thought I could build something better." "And did you?" "Eventually. It took 8 years, hundreds of prototypes, more failures than I can count. But yes, we built a battery that was lighter, cheaper, and more efficient than anything on the market." Daniel pulled up a slide on the courtroom screen, a graph showing Hale Technologies' stock price over 5 years. "This is your company's stock price. Can you walk us through what happened?" Victoria studied the graph. "For the first 3 years, we were private, building the technology, testing it, refining it. In year 4, we went public. The stock started at $40 a share. It climbed steadily as we announced successful tests, signed contracts with automakers and utility companies. By year 5, it had reached almost $300. What happened then? We hit a manufacturing problem. The battery worked perfectly in the lab. But when we tried to scale up production, we ran into yield issues. Too many batteries were failing quality control tests." "When did you first learn about these problems?" "November, 2 years ago. Marcus Webb, my CTO, came to me with preliminary data showing yield rates below 30%. "What did you do?" I asked him how long it would take to fix. He said 6 to 8 months. I authorized additional funding for the manufacturing division, $12 million. I wanted this solved as quickly as possible. Did you sell any stock during this period? Yes. I had a prearranged trading plan that executed automatically based on dates and price targets. I set it up in September before I knew about the manufacturing problems. So the stock sales weren't based on insider information? No, they were scheduled months in advance and publicly disclosed in SEC filings. Daniel pulled up another document. I'm showing you a press release from February of 2 years ago. What is this? That's the announcement we made about the manufacturing delays. We disclosed everything we knew at the time. The yield problems, the timeline for fixes, the potential impact on revenue. Who wrote this press release? Our communications team drafted it, but I personally reviewed and edited it. I made it more detailed because I wanted investors to have complete information. Why did you do that if you were trying to commit fraud? Briggs stood. Objection. Leading. Sustained. Rephrase. Ms. Hale, what was your intention in making this disclosure? I wanted to be transparent. Yes, it would hurt the stock price, but hiding problems never works. I'd rather take the hit and maintain trust with investors than lie and get caught later. Daniel nodded. Let's talk about David Park. How long did he work for you? 7 years. I hired him as a junior analyst, promoted him to CFO after 4 years. Did you trust him? Victoria's voice caught slightly. Yes, completely. He was brilliant with numbers, understood the business inside and out. I thought he believed in what we were building. When did you learn about his communications with Meridian Capital? I didn't know until you showed me those emails 2 days ago. He never disclosed those conversations to the board. If he had, we would have required him to recuse himself from any decisions involving company strategy. Did you know about the wire transfers from Titan Energy? No, I had no idea. Ms. Hale, did you commit securities fraud? No. Did you manipulate Hale Technologies' stock price? No. Did you lie to investors? Never. Not once. Victoria's voice was steady now, strong. I built that company because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to prove that clean energy could compete with fossil fuels. I made mistakes along the way. I trusted the wrong people. I missed warning signs I should have seen, but I never lied, I never cheated, and I never betrayed the people who believed in me. Daniel stepped back. Your witness, Mr. Briggs. Malcolm stood, buttoning his jacket. He approached Victoria with the careful deliberation of a surgeon preparing to cut. Ms. Hale, you testified that you sold stock as part of a prearranged trading plan. Is that correct? Yes. But you could have canceled that plan, couldn't you? You could have stopped the sales once you learned about the manufacturing problems? Technically, yes. But that would have required board approval and public disclosure. It would have signaled to the market that something was wrong. So you let the sales continue to avoid signaling that something was wrong, even though something was wrong. I let the sales continue because they were legal and prearranged. I disclosed the manufacturing problems through proper channels. 2 months later. You learned about the problems in November and didn't disclose them until February. Why the delay? We needed time to assess the full scope of the issues and develop a plan to fix them. Making a premature announcement based on incomplete information would have caused unnecessary panic. Or you needed time to sell your stock before the price crashed. No, that's not. Ms. Hale, you sold $217 million worth of stock before the crash. Do you expect this jury to believe that's a coincidence? It's not a coincidence. It's a prearranged trading plan executing on schedule. Briggs pulled up a document. I'm showing you the 10b5-1 trading plan you filed in September. According to this document, you reserve the right to modify or cancel the plan at any time. Is that correct? Victoria hesitated. Yes, that's standard language. Standard language that gave you the ability to stop the sales if you wanted to? Yes. But you didn't stop them. Because I didn't need to. The sales were legitimate. Or because you knew the stock was about to crash and you wanted to get out first. Daniel stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, Mr. Briggs, ask questions, don't make speeches. Briggs shifted tactics. Ms. Hale, You testified that you disclosed the manufacturing problems in February, but you didn't disclose how bad they were, did you? We disclosed everything we knew at the time. Did you disclose that Marcus Webb estimated an 18-month delay? The press release said 6 to 8 months because that was our best estimate for fixing the most critical issues. But Mr. Webb's internal assessment said 18 months. That's more than double what you told investors. Internal assessments are always worst-case scenarios. We were working to beat that timeline. Were you? Or were you just trying to minimize the damage to your stock price while you finished selling? Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. I was trying to save my company. Every dollar I spent on the manufacturing division, every engineer I hired, every minute I spent working on solutions, it was all about saving what we'd built. If you were trying to save the company, why didn't you buy more stock when the price crashed? Why didn't you show confidence in your own business? The question hit home. Victoria went pale. I couldn't afford to. Most of my wealth was already tied up in company stock. I didn't have liquid capital to... You couldn't afford to? You'd just sold $217 million. That money was earmarked for other purposes, taxes, charitable commitments, personal expenses, like the $10 million penthouse you purchased in March. The gallery erupted in whispers. Victoria's face flushed. That purchase was under contract in January, before the stock crashed. I couldn't back out without losing my deposit. How much was the deposit? $500,000. So you went ahead with a $10 million luxury purchase to save $500,000? That doesn't sound like someone whose wealth was tied up in company stock. I made a mistake. I should have walked away from the purchase, but I wasn't thinking clearly. Everything was falling apart and She stopped, collected herself. I made a bad decision. That doesn't mean I committed fraud. Briggs pressed harder. Let's talk about the rejected buyout offer from Titan Energy. You never disclosed that to investors, did you? It wasn't material. Companies receive unsolicited offers all the time. An $8 billion offer isn't material? We rejected it immediately. There was nothing to disclose. Or you didn't disclose it because you knew Titan would try to destroy you for rejecting them. You knew they'd come after your company, damage your stock price, maybe even manufacture a fraud case against you. Victoria stared at him. I didn't know any of that. I rejected the offer because selling to a fossil fuel company would have betrayed everything Hale Technologies stood for. Noble words, but the timing is interesting, isn't it? You reject Titan's offer in September. You set up your trading plan in September. Manufacturing problems emerge in November. You sell massive amounts of stock in January and February. The company collapses in March. And now you're here claiming it's all a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. David Park was being paid by Titan. Marcus Webb went to work for a competitor. The evidence shows that you sold stock before a crash. The evidence shows you knew about problems and delayed disclosure. The evidence shows you spent millions on luxury purchases while your company burned. Whatever Mr. Park, or Mr. Webb did or didn't do doesn't change the fact that you profited enormously from this disaster. I didn't profit. I lost everything. My company, my reputation, You lost stock value, but you cashed out $217 million before that happened. Most people would consider that profiting. Victoria's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. I built that company from nothing. I spent 15 years of my life trying to change the world. And yes, I sold some stock. I'm not apologizing for that. But I never lied, I never cheated, and I never betrayed anyone. If you want to convict me for being naive, for trusting the wrong people, fine. But don't sit there and tell me I'm a criminal because I succeeded and others wanted to tear me down. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Briggs seemed caught off guard by the raw emotion in her voice. Then his expression hardened. Miss Hale, did you or did you not sell $217 million worth of stock while in possession of material, non-public information about your company's failing technology? I sold stock according to a legal, prearranged trading plan while working around the clock to fix problems I had fully disclosed to investors. So no, I did not commit securities fraud. That's for the jury to decide. Briggs turned to Judge Stern. No further questions. Daniel stood for redirect. Ms. Hale, Mr. Briggs asked why you didn't buy stock when the price crashed. Did you want to? Of course. I believed in the technology. I still do. But you couldn't afford to? Most of my wealth was in company stock that had just lost 2/3 of its value. I had tax obligations on the stock I'd sold, commitments I'd made to charities and family. I was effectively cash poor despite the sales. The penthouse purchase Mr. Briggs mentioned, do you still own it? No. I sold it last month to pay legal fees at a $2 million loss. So you didn't profit from that purchase. I lost money on nearly everything after the stock crashed. The only thing I profited from was getting out before I lost everything. Daniel moved closer to the stand. Ms. Hale, if you could go back, would you do anything differently? Victoria thought about it. I'd have been more careful about who I trusted. I'd have asked more questions about David's outside activities. I'd have insisted on more oversight of the manufacturing division. But I wouldn't change the core of what we were doing. Hale Technologies was trying to build something that mattered. That's not a crime. That's not fraud. That's just trying. Her voice broke on the last word. Daniel let it hang there for a moment, then nodded. Nothing further, Your Honor. Victoria stepped down from the stand, returned to the defense table. Her hands were shaking. Daniel leaned over, whispered, You did well. I fell apart. You were human. That's what they needed to see. Judge Stern looked at her watch. It's 11:30. We'll break for lunch and resume at 1. Mr. Reeves, do you have any other witnesses? One more, Your Honor. I'd like to recall Marcus Webb. Briggs stood immediately. Objection. Mr. Webb has already testified for the prosecution. The defense had their chance to cross-examine. Your Honor, new evidence has come to light since Mr. Webb's testimony. I have a few brief questions based on that evidence. Judge Stern frowned. What new evidence? Information regarding the rejected Titan Energy buyout offer. Mr. Webb was CTO at the time. He would have been involved in evaluating the offer. The judge considered. I'll allow limited questioning on that topic only. You have 10 minutes when we resume, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Your Honor. The recess began. Daniel and Victoria fought their way through the press gauntlet to find a quiet diner 3 blocks away. They ordered sandwiches, didn't eat them. What are you going to ask Webb? Victoria said. About the buyout. About whether Titan made threats after you rejected them. About whether he was approached by Titan or Meridian before the manufacturing problems emerged. Daniel stirred his coffee without drinking it. I'm fishing, but sometimes that's all you can do. His phone buzzed. Text from Agent Chen at the FBI. Update. We've opened a preliminary investigation into Meridian Capital's relationship with Titan Energy. We've also flagged David Park's offshore accounts for review. This is moving faster than I expected. Someone high up is interested. Daniel showed the message to Victoria. The feds are paying attention. Will it help us? Not in time for the verdict, but if the jury convicts, it'll help with appeals. And it might scare whoever's behind this into making a mistake. Or scare them into making sure we don't live long enough to appeal. Daniel had thought the same thing, but hadn't said it out loud. The security team stays with you until this is over. After that, we'll reassess. They returned to the courthouse at 12:45. The afternoon session felt different. The energy in the gallery was charged, expectant. Everyone sensed this was coming to an end. Marcus Webb was recalled to the stand. He looked annoyed, like he had better things to do. Daniel approached without his usual notes, just the questions in his head. Mr. Webb, you testified earlier this week about the battery manufacturing problems. But there's something we didn't discuss. 2 years ago, Titan Energy offered to buy Hale Technologies for $8 billion. Do you remember that? Webb shifted. Vaguely. Vaguely, it was an $8 billion offer. Surely that's memorable. We received a lot of acquisition interest over the years. How many $8 billion offers? That was the largest. And the board rejected it unanimously. Were you surprised by that decision? No, the offer was too low. Hale Technologies was worth more. Too low. What do you think the company was worth at the time? Based on our projections, at least 12 to 15 billion. Based on projections that assumed the battery technology would work at scale. What if someone knew those projections were wrong? What if someone knew the technology couldn't scale? Would 8 billion suddenly look like a good deal? Briggs stood. Objection, speculation. Your Honor, I'm establishing Mr. Webb's state of mind regarding the buyout. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Webb. Webb's jaw tightened. If the technology couldn't scale, the company was worth significantly less. But we didn't know that at the time of the offer. Are you sure about that? When exactly did you first discover the manufacturing problems? I testified to this already. November, 2 years ago. That's when you told Ms. Hale. I'm asking when you first discovered them. When did you personally first realize the yield rates were below acceptable levels? Webb went very still. I'd have to check my notes. Would those notes show that you knew about yield problems as early as September, the same month Titan made their offer? I don't recall. Daniel pulled up an email on the courtroom screen. This is an internal email from you to your manufacturing chief dated September 12th, 2 years ago. Can you read the highlighted section? Webb's face had gone pale. It says, yield rates are trending below 40%. We need to contain this information until we understand the full scope. September 12th. That's 1 week after Titan made their buyout offer, 1 week after the board rejected it. You already knew the technology was struggling, didn't you? Early data isn't the same as a confirmed problem, but it's enough to know that the company's valuation was based on false assumptions. It's enough to know that $8 billion might be the best offer you'd ever get. I didn't think that way. No? Then why did you tell your manufacturing chief to contain the information? Why not immediately tell Ms. Hale and the board? I wanted to verify the data before causing alarm. Or you wanted to see if Titan would sweeten their offer, or if you could personally benefit from the situation before it became public. Briggs was on his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Mr. Reeves is accusing the witness of crimes with no evidence. I have plenty of evidence, Your Honor. Mr. Webb knew about problems in September. He concealed them from Ms. Hale for 2 months. During that time, he was in communication with David Park about stock options and timing, and shortly after Titan's offer was rejected, someone at Titan began planning how to destroy Hale Technologies. Judge Stern held up her hand. Mr. Reeves, do you have evidence that Titan planned to destroy Hale Technologies? Not direct evidence, no, but I have a pattern of behavior that strongly suggests patterns aren't evidence. If you have something concrete, present it. If not, move on. Daniel knew he was losing her. He had one more card to play. Mr. Webb, after you left Hale Technologies, you went to work for Apex Solutions. When did they first approach you about employment? I told you yesterday, late January. I know what you told me. I'm asking if that's the truth, because I have phone records showing calls between your personal cell phone and Apex's CEO starting in October. 3 months before you claim they approached you. Webb's eyes widened. Daniel was bluffing. He didn't have phone records, but he had a hunch, and Webb's reaction confirmed it. Those calls were about something else. About what? I don't remember. You don't remember why Apex's CEO called you 3 times in October? It might have been about a speaking engagement. They sometimes hire me to consult. Before you worked for them. I have a reputation in the field. Yes, a reputation for sabotaging your employer to benefit their competitors. Daniel took a step back. No further questions. Webb left the stand looking shaken. Daniel returned to the defense table, where Victoria was staring at him. Did you actually have phone records? No, but he didn't know that. Judge Stern checked her watch. Mr. Reeves, any other witnesses? No, Your Honor. The defense rests. Mr. Briggs, any rebuttal? Briggs stood. Just one witness, Your Honor. I'd like to recall David Park. Daniel's stomach dropped. This was the counterpunch. Briggs was going to let Park try to clean up the damage from yesterday. David took the stand again, looking more composed than before. Briggs approached him with a sympathetic expression. Mr. Park, Mr. Reeves asked you a lot of questions yesterday about wire transfers and consulting fees. I want to give you a chance to explain in your own words. Where did that money come from? I did consulting work for various clients, including companies in the energy sector. The payments were legitimate compensation for strategic analysis and market research. Did you do anything illegal? No. Did you conspire to defraud investors? Absolutely not. Did you sabotage Hale Technologies? Never. I worked hard for that company. When I saw it was failing, I protected my own interests by selling stock and finding new employment. That's not a crime. That's self-preservation. Briggs nodded. No further questions. Daniel stood for cross. Mr. Park, you just testified under oath that you never conspired to defraud investors. Do you stand by that? Yes. Then explain this. Daniel pulled up a new document he'd found that morning, hidden in the server files. An email from David to an unidentified recipient. This is an email you sent on January 8th, 2 years ago. The recipient's address has been scrubbed, but the metadata shows it was sent to a Meridian Capital domain. Can you read it for the jury? David's face went white. I don't have my glasses. I'll read it then. Phase 2 complete. Stock sales accelerating as planned. Target announcement date, February 15th. Expect full collapse by month end. Proceeding to Phase 3. What is Phase 2, Mr. Park? Silence. What's Phase 3? Nothing. Who are you sending progress reports to? David looked at his lawyer in the gallery. At Briggs. At anyone who might save him. No one moved. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The gallery exploded. Judge Stern's gavel cracked like thunder. Order! Order in this court! Daniel waited for silence, then said quietly, You invoke the Fifth? After testifying under oath that you did nothing wrong? Which is it, Mr. Park? Are you innocent, or are you refusing to answer because the truth will incriminate you? I'm done answering your questions. Your Honor, I move to strike Mr. Park's entire testimony. He can't claim innocence and then invoke the Fifth when asked for details. Briggs jumped up. Your Honor, Mr. Park has the right to decline to answer specific questions that might incriminate him. Judge Stern looked furious. Mr. Park, you've put me in an impossible position. You testified for this prosecution. You can't now claim Fifth Amendment protection for questions on cross-examination. That's not how this works. David's lawyer in the gallery shouted, Your Honor, I'm advising my client not to answer any further questions. Your client should have thought of that before he took the stand. Judge Stern turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you are instructed to disregard Mr. Park's testimony in its entirety. His refusal to answer questions on cross-examination means the defense was unable to properly test his credibility. Therefore, his testimony cannot be considered. It was a huge win. Daniel tried not to show his relief. Briggs requested a recess to confer with his team, but Judge Stern denied it. You called the witness, Mr. Briggs. You deal with the consequences. Anything else? No, Your Honor. The people rest. Then we'll hear closing arguments tomorrow morning at 9. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Daniel and Victoria sat in stunned silence as the courtroom emptied around them. What just happened? Victoria whispered. We got lucky. David panicked and destroyed his own credibility. Without his testimony, Briggs's case just got a lot weaker. Does that mean we win? It means we have a chance, a real one. Daniel gathered his notes. But we're not done yet. Closing arguments tomorrow. That's where we make our final case. They left through the side exit to avoid the press. Outside, the evening air was cold, damp. It smelled like rain coming. Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He considered not answering, then changed his mind. What? The filtered voice was back, but this time it sounded different, angry. You're making a mistake. Yeah, I get that a lot. David Park is a small piece. You think destroying him changes anything? I think it changes everything. Then you're stupider than I thought. Tonight, you're going to receive a package. Inside, you'll find evidence that Victoria Hale is guilty. Real evidence, not the circumstantial garbage you've been fighting against. And tomorrow, you're going to walk into that courtroom and tell the jury you made a mistake, that you got caught up in conspiracy theories and lost sight of the truth. And if I don't? Then the package goes to the press, and the evidence shows that you knew your client was guilty all along, that you helped her cover it up, that you're just as corrupt as everyone else. The line went dead. Daniel stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, feeling the walls closing in. Victoria was watching him. What did they say? They're going to try one more thing, a last-ditch attempt to force us to fold. He started walking toward his car. Whatever happens tonight, whatever they send, we don't react. We stay the course. We finish this. Daniel, what if they have real evidence? Then we'd have seen it already. This is a bluff. They're scared. We're close to something they don't want exposed, so they're making noise, trying to shake us. It's working. I know, but we don't let them see that. They drove back to Daniel's apartment. The security team followed in a second car. Inside, Daniel made coffee, pulled out his notes for closing arguments, tried to focus. At 8 o'clock, someone knocked on his door. He checked the peephole, saw a delivery driver, opened the door a crack. Package for Daniel Reeves. I didn't order anything. Someone did. The driver handed over a thick manila envelope, got a signature, left. Daniel stared at the envelope. Victoria came to stand beside him. Is that it? Probably. Are you going to open it? He thought about throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won. He tore open the envelope, pulled out a stack of documents. The first page made his stomach drop. It was a financial record showing wire transfers from Victoria's personal account to David Park's offshore account. 2 transfers, each for $500,000, dated January and February of 2 years ago. No, Victoria said, reading over his shoulder. No, that's not real. I never sent him money. Daniel flipped through the pages. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, even email instructions that appeared to come from Victoria's account authorizing the payments. It was perfect, too perfect, which meant it was fabricated. But proving that in court would be nearly impossible. His phone buzzed. Text from the filtered number. See you tomorrow. Daniel set the documents down, looked at Victoria. These are fake. I know they're fake, but how do we prove it? We don't. We ignore them. If these were real, the prosecution would have found them months ago. This is manufactured evidence, created to panic us into surrendering. But what if they give it to Briggs? What if he files an emergency motion to introduce new evidence? Then we fight it. We question chain of custody, we demand forensic analysis, we do whatever it takes. Daniel moved to his laptop, started searching. But first, we're sending everything to Agent Chen at the FBI. Let them start examining it. If it's fake, and it is, they'll find proof. He scanned all the documents, sent them with a detailed email explaining how and when they'd been received. Agent Chen's response came back within minutes. Received. Will expedite analysis. These look suspicious at first glance. Stay strong. Stay strong. Easier said than done. Victoria paced the small apartment. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep fighting when they have unlimited resources, and I'm down to 1 lawyer in coveralls. Hey. Daniel caught her arm, made her stop. We're not done. Tomorrow we walk into that courtroom and we tell the jury the truth. We explain that you were framed, that David Park and Marcus Webb were working with Titan Energy to destroy your company, that every piece of evidence against you has been manipulated or taken out of context. And then we let them decide. What if they decide wrong? Then we appeal, and we keep appealing until someone listens. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? Really? It's not just about justice or Rebecca or redemption. Why risk everything for me? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Because 7 years ago, I defended a guilty man and told myself I was doing my job, that everyone deserves representation, that the system works. And then that man killed my wife. And I realized I'd been lying to myself. I hadn't been serving justice. I'd been serving my own ego. He moved to the window, looked out at the city. I spent 7 years punishing myself, hiding, pretending I could escape what I'd done. But you can't escape yourself. You can only choose what you do next. And when I saw you standing alone in that courtroom, I saw a chance to choose differently, to defend someone who actually deserved it, to fight for something that mattered. And if we lose, then at least I fought. At least I tried. That's more than I've done in 7 years. Victoria wiped her eyes. You're a better man than you think you are. I'm a man who got a second chance, that's all. He turned back to his notes. Now help me write this closing argument. We've got 1 shot to convince 12 strangers that the truth matters more than convenience. They worked until midnight, crafting the narrative, finding the right words. When Victoria finally fell asleep on the couch, Daniel sat at his desk and thought about tomorrow. 1 more day, 1 more fight. Then it would be over one way or another. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Daddy, when are you coming home? Mom says you're helping someone, but I miss you. He texted back, soon, baby. Daddy promises. I love you so much. Love you too. Daniel set down his phone and allowed himself 1 moment of weakness, One moment to feel the weight of everything he was risking, everything he stood to lose. Then he pushed it aside and went back to work. Tomorrow, he'd give the closing argument of his life. Tomorrow, he'd find out if 7 years of penance had earned him a shot at redemption. Tomorrow, the jury would decide. Daniel woke at dawn to the sound of sirens. For a disoriented moment, he thought they were coming for him, that somehow the fabricated evidence had already reached the authorities. Then he realized the sirens were moving away, toward some other crisis in the endless churn of the city. Victoria was already awake, sitting at the window with a cup of coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. "You should eat something," Daniel said. "Can't. My stomach won't let me." "Mine either." He poured his own coffee, stood beside her. Outside, the sun was just starting to burn through the morning haze. "You ready for this?" "No, but I don't think that matters anymore." They dressed in silence. Daniel put on the same coveralls he'd been wearing all week, a deliberate choice. He wanted the jury to remember who he was when this started. A janitor who stepped up when no one else would. Not a polished attorney, just a man trying to do right. The drive to the courthouse felt longer than usual. Traffic was heavier, or maybe time had just slowed down. When they finally parked and walked toward the building, Daniel noticed something different. The crowd of reporters had thinned. Some had moved on to other stories. The ones who remained looked tired, like they'd been camping out for days. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Every seat in the gallery filled, people standing along the walls. Daniel recognized faces, journalists, legal scholars, activists from clean energy groups. This case had become bigger than Victoria, bigger than Hale Technologies. It had become a referendum on whether the powerful could destroy the principled and walk away clean. Judge Stern took the bench at exactly 9 o'clock. She looked at the packed gallery with barely concealed irritation, then at the jury. "Before we begin closing arguments, I need to address a matter that came to my attention this morning." Daniel's stomach clenched. The fabricated documents. Someone had sent them to the judge. "Mr. Briggs, did you attempt to introduce new evidence last night?" Malcolm stood, looking uncomfortable. "Your Honor, my office received certain documents anonymously. We reviewed them and determined they were not authenticated and therefore inadmissible. We did not attempt to introduce them. But you brought them to my chambers at 7 this morning. To inform the court of their existence, yes, and to note for the record that the defense may have been involved in evidence tampering." Daniel was on his feet. "That's a lie, Your Honor. Those documents were fabricated and sent to intimidate my client. We forwarded them to the FBI for analysis." "Both of you, approach." At the bench, Judge Stern kept her voice low and lethal. "I don't know what game is being played here, but I will not allow my courtroom to be used for it. Mr. Briggs, unless you can authenticate these documents and establish chain of custody, they don't exist. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Reeves, if I find out you had any involvement in creating false evidence—" "I didn't, Your Honor. Someone's trying to derail this trial." "Then they failed. We're proceeding with closing arguments. And if either of you tries to reference documents not in evidence, I'll hold you in contempt. Clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." They returned to their tables. Victoria leaned over, whispered, "What was that about?" "Briggs tried to use the fake documents. Judge shut him down." "So we're okay?" "For now." Judge Stern addressed the courtroom. "Mr. Briggs, your closing argument." Malcolm stood, buttoned his jacket, approached the jury. He looked less confident than he had at the start of the trial. David Park's implosion had shaken him, but he was still a professional, still dangerous. "Ladies and gentlemen, over the past week you've heard a lot of testimony, a lot of theories, a lot of finger-pointing at third parties who aren't on trial here. But let me remind you of the simple facts at the heart of this case." He pulled up Victoria's stock trading records on the screen. Victoria Hale sold $217 million worth of stock before her company collapsed. She did this while in possession of information that the average investor didn't have, information about manufacturing problems that would destroy the stock price. That's insider trading. That's securities fraud. Everything else is noise. Briggs walked along the jury box. "The defense wants you to believe in a vast conspiracy, that Titan Energy, one of America's largest corporations, orchestrated an elaborate scheme to frame one woman. That multiple executives committed crimes to make Miss Hale look guilty. That even the FBI is somehow in on it." Several jurors looked skeptical. Briggs saw it. pressed the advantage. But here's what actually happened. Victoria Hale built a company on promises she couldn't keep. When the technology failed, she didn't come clean immediately. She waited. She sold her stock. She made hundreds of millions of dollars while regular investors lost their savings. And when she got caught, she hired a lawyer who would tell you any story, no matter how absurd, to avoid accountability. Daniel felt Victoria tense beside him. He put a hand on her arm, steadying her. Now, was David Park corrupt? Maybe. Was Marcus Webb disloyal? Possibly. But their actions don't erase Ms. Hale's crimes. She sold stock with inside knowledge. She delayed disclosure to protect herself. She profited while others suffered. Those are the facts. And facts don't care about conspiracy theories. Briggs turned to face Victoria directly. Ms. Hale wants you to believe she's a victim. But the real victims are the teachers, the nurses, the retirees who believed in her company and lost everything. Your verdict should speak for them. It should say that no one, no matter how rich, no matter how connected, is above the law. Thank you. He sat down. The courtroom was silent. It had been a good closing, not brilliant, but solid. He'd reminded the jury of the simple narrative they'd started with. Judge Stern turned to Daniel. Mr. Reeves. Daniel stood. He didn't have notes. Everything he wanted to say was in his head, in his heart. He walked to the jury box slowly, making eye contact with each of them. Mr. Briggs just told you this case is simple. He's wrong. This case is about power, about what happens when the powerful decide someone needs to be destroyed, and they have the resources to make it happen. He pointed to the prosecution table. The government has unlimited resources, an army of investigators, access to every financial record, every email, every phone call. They spent 18 months building this case. And what did they find? Circumstantial evidence, suspicious timing, nothing concrete, nothing that proves intent. Nothing that shows Victoria Hale actually committed a crime. Daniel moved to the evidence screen, pulled up the timeline he'd prepared. So let me tell you a different story. A story about a woman who built something revolutionary. A technology that threatened a $100 billion industry, and an industry that decided she had to be stopped. He walked them through it. The rejected buyout offer from Titan Energy, the payments to David Park, the coordinated stock sales by executives who knew the company was being sabotaged, Marcus Webb's secret communications with competitors, the manufactured crisis that destroyed Hale Technologies right when it was about to change the world. Mr. Briggs wants you to believe this is conspiracy theory, but look at who benefited from Hale Technologies' collapse. Not Victoria Hale. She lost her company, her reputation, her freedom. Who won? Titan Energy. Their stock went up 30% when Hale Technologies crashed. Meridian Capital. They picked up Hale's contracts and technology for pennies on the dollar. David Park. He made millions and got a better job. Marcus Webb. Same thing. Daniel stopped in front of the jury box. The only person who didn't benefit from this disaster is sitting at that table, and you're being asked to send her to prison for it. Does that make sense to you? He could see a few jurors wavering. Not enough, but it was something. Now, did Victoria sell stock? Yes. Was it legal? Absolutely. It was part of a prearranged trading plan, publicly disclosed, approved by regulators. Did she delay announcing bad news? By 2 months, while she worked to fix the problems and assess their full scope. That's not fraud. That's responsible corporate governance. Daniel's voice dropped, became more personal. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but she's rich. She made millions. Why should I care? And you're right to think that. Victoria Hale is rich. She did make millions. But being rich doesn't make you guilty. And the government doesn't get to skip the part where they prove their case just because the defendant can afford a good lawyer. He paused. Except Victoria couldn't afford a good lawyer. Her entire legal team abandoned her the morning trial started. She got me. A janitor who hadn't practiced law in 7 years. A man with a destroyed reputation and a history of catastrophic failure. That's not the defense team of someone who's guilty and well-connected. That's desperation. Several jurors smiled slightly. The ice was cracking. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Look at the actual evidence. Not the innuendo, not the suspicious timing, not the fact that Victoria is rich and made money. Look at whether the government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that she committed securities fraud. Did they show she had illegal insider information? No. They showed she had the same information every executive has. Did they show she manipulated the stock price? No. They showed the stock went down after bad news was disclosed. Did they show criminal intent? No. They showed she made legal stock sales and then disclosed problems in accordance with SEC regulations. Daniel turned to look at Victoria. Is she perfect? No, she trusted the wrong people. She missed warning signs. She made mistakes, but mistakes aren't crimes, and being naive isn't fraud. He faced the jury again. 7 years ago, I made a mistake. I defended a man I believed was innocent. He wasn't. He was a monster, and after I got him acquitted, he killed 3 people, including my wife. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Judge Stern looked surprised. I tell you this because I know what guilt looks like. I know what it feels like. I lived with it every day for 7 years. I walked away from the law because I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. I became a janitor because cleaning floors was the only thing I could do that wouldn't hurt anyone. His voice cracked slightly. But when I saw Victoria Hale standing alone in this courtroom, I knew she was different. I knew she was innocent. Not because she told me so, not because I wanted to believe it, but because I've seen real guilt up close, and this isn't it. This is a woman who built something beautiful and watched powerful people tear it down. This is someone who deserves justice, not a prison sentence. Daniel moved closer to the jury box, his voice strengthening. You 12 people are the only thing standing between Victoria Hale and 20 years in federal prison. The government has power, resources, institutional authority. She has the truth. And she has you. That's it. That's the whole ball game. He pointed back at Malcolm Briggs. Mr. Briggs said facts don't care about conspiracy theories. He's right. Facts don't care. But facts also don't care about convenient narratives. And the narrative he's selling you, that Victoria Hale is a greedy criminal who betrayed investors, only works if you ignore every fact that doesn't fit. Daniel pulled up David Park's wire transfers on the screen. This is a fact. $2 million from Titan Energy to Victoria's CFO. Mr. Briggs wants you to ignore it. He wants you to believe it's just a coincidence. He pulled up Marcus Webb's emails. This is a fact. The CTO coordinating with competitors while sabotaging his own company. Mr. Briggs wants you to ignore it. He pulled up the rejected buyout offer. This is a fact. Titan Energy offered $8 billion for Hale Technologies. Victoria rejected them. 6 months later, her company was destroyed. Mr. Briggs wants you to call that coincidence too. Daniel stepped back, spreading his hands. How many coincidences do you have to ignore before you see the pattern? How much evidence of corruption by other people do you have to dismiss before you admit that maybe, just maybe, Victoria Hale is telling the truth? He was quiet for a moment, letting it sink in. Then, softly, reasonable doubt isn't about certainty. It's about fairness. It's about not convicting someone when the evidence could point in multiple directions. And this evidence points in so many directions that convicting Victoria Hale would be a miscarriage of justice. Daniel looked at each juror one more time. I'm not asking you to like her. I'm not asking you to think she's perfect. I'm asking you to hold the government to its burden of proof. And they haven't met it. They've shown you suspicious circumstances. But suspicious isn't guilty. Not in America. Not when someone's freedom is on the line. He walked back to the defense table, stood behind Victoria's chair. Find her not guilty. Not because you think the system is rigged, though maybe it is. Not because you believe in conspiracy theories, though the evidence supports this one. Find her not guilty because the government failed to prove she committed a crime. That's all the law requires. That's all justice demands. Daniel sat down. Victoria's eyes were wet. She reached over, squeezed his hand once. Judge Stern addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence and the arguments. It's now your duty to deliberate and reach a verdict. I'll give you your instructions, and then you'll retire to the jury room. She spent 30 minutes explaining the law, the elements of securities fraud, the burden of proof, the meaning of reasonable doubt. The jury listened intently, taking notes. At 11:45, they filed out to begin deliberations. And then there was nothing to do but wait. Daniel and Victoria found a bench in the hallway. The press surrounded them immediately, but Daniel waved them off. No comment until there's a verdict. How long do you think? Victoria asked. Could be hours, could be days. He leaned back against the wall. Try not to think about it. That's impossible. I know. They sat in silence. Around them, the courthouse continued its daily business. Other trials, other lawyers, other people fighting their own battles. The world didn't stop just because theirs hung in the balance. Daniel's phone buzzed. Text from Agent Chen. Analysis complete on those documents you sent. Definitely fabricated. Metadata shows they were created 2 days ago, not 2 years ago. Bank confirms no such transfers ever occurred. Whoever made these was sloppy. We're tracking the source. He showed the message to Victoria. The fake evidence is debunked. Does it matter now? Maybe. If the jury's out long enough, we can file a motion to inform them about the fabrication attempt. Show them how desperate the other side is. And if they're not out long enough? Daniel didn't answer. A quick verdict usually meant conviction. Juries that acquitted took their time, wanted to be thorough, wanted to make sure. 1 hour passed, then 2. Daniel bought coffee from a vending machine, didn't drink it. Victoria paced, sat down, paced again. The security team stood watch at both ends of the hallway. At 2:15, the bailiff appeared. They're back. Daniel's heart stopped. 3 hours. That was fast. Too fast. They filed back into the courtroom. The gallery had filled again, somehow everyone knowing the verdict was imminent. Judge Stern took the bench, her expression unreadable. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson stood, a middle-aged black woman who'd been taking detailed notes throughout the trial. We have, Your Honor. Please hand it to the bailiff. The bailiff took the verdict form, carried it to the judge. Judge Stern read it, her face giving nothing away. Then she handed it back to the bailiff, who returned it to the foreperson. The defendant will rise. Daniel and Victoria stood. She was shaking. He put a hand on her elbow, steadying her. On the charge of securities fraud, how do you find? The foreperson looked directly at Victoria. We find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, the sound of reporters sprinting for the exits. Victoria collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Daniel stood frozen, unable to process what he'd just heard. Not guilty. They'd won. Judge Stern's gavel cracked repeatedly. Order! I will have order! When the noise finally died down, she turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your service. You are dismissed. The jury filed out. Several of them glanced at Victoria with what looked like sympathy. The foreperson nodded slightly at Daniel, a gesture of respect. Judge Stern looked at Victoria. Ms. Hale, you are free to go. Case dismissed. The gavel fell one final time. Malcolm Briggs gathered his files without a word, his face stony. As he passed the defense table, he stopped. You got lucky, Reeves. No, I got it right. There's a difference. Briggs walked away. His team followed, leaving the prosecution table empty. Daniel turned to Victoria. She was still crying, unable to speak. He pulled her to her feet and she threw her arms around him, holding on like she might drown if she let go. Thank you, she managed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You fought for this. You earned it. They stood there while the gallery emptied, while reporters rushed to file their stories, while the machinery of justice ground onto its next case. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now, you rebuild. You take back your company, your life, everything they tried to take from you. And you? Daniel looked around the courtroom. This place that had been his home, then his nightmare, then his redemption. I don't know. Maybe I practice law again. Maybe I don't. But I'm not hiding anymore. That much I know. They walked out through the main entrance this time, not avoiding the press. Cameras flashed, questions flew. Daniel held up a hand. Ms. Hale has been vindicated by a jury of her peers. The truth came out. Justice was served. That's all we have to say. Mr. Reeves, will you continue practicing law? I'm considering it. Ms. Hale, what's next for Hale Technologies? Victoria stepped forward, her voice stronger than Daniel had ever heard it. Hale Technologies will continue our work in clean energy. The people who tried to destroy us failed. Our technology works. Our mission matters. And we're not going anywhere. More questions, but they pushed through, got to Daniel's car. As they drove away from the courthouse, Victoria said, "I meant what I said. The company's going to survive this. You'll need capital. Investors won't trust you for a while. Then I'll fund it myself, sell the penthouse, liquidate everything. I don't care. I'm not letting them win." Daniel smiled. "Good. Don't." He dropped her at her apartment, waited until she was safely inside with the security team. Then he drove to Connecticut. Karen's sister lived in a small town near the coast, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Daniel found the house easily, knocked on the door. Karen answered, her expression guarded. "She's in the backyard." Emma was on a swing set, pumping her legs, flying higher and higher. When she saw Daniel, she jumped off mid-swing, landed badly, scrambled up, and ran to him. "Daddy!" He caught her, lifted her up, held her tight. "Hey, baby, I missed you so much." "Are you done helping that lady?" "Yeah, I'm done." "Did you win?" Daniel looked at Karen over Emma's head. "Yeah, we won." Karen's expression softened slightly. "I saw it on the news. Congratulations." "Thank you for keeping her safe." "She's my daughter, too." Karen paused. "Daniel, what you did, stepping back into court after everything, that took courage. I hope you know that." "I hope I didn't make a mistake." "You didn't. You helped someone who needed it. That's what Rebecca would have wanted." The sound of her name still hurt, but less than before. "Can I take Emma home?" "Of course. Her bag's inside." They stayed for dinner, Daniel catching up on a week of Emma's life. School projects, friend drama, a new book series she was obsessed with. Normal things, beautiful things. The kind of things he'd been too numb to appreciate for years. On the drive home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat. Daniel watched her in the rearview mirror, this perfect little person who existed because he and Rebecca had loved each other once. Whatever else he'd lost, he still had this. He still had her. He carried Emma upstairs to his apartment, tucked her into his bed since he didn't have a proper guest room. Then he sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Agent Chen had sent another email. "Major development, wire transfers to David Park traced back to a Titan Energy subsidiary. We're executing search warrants tomorrow. Multiple arrests expected. Your evidence was crucial. Thank you." Daniel forwarded it to Victoria, then to Jessica Brennan at ProPublica. The story would break in the morning. The conspiracy that the jury had only suspected would be proven. Titan Energy executives would face prosecution. The truth would come out. He thought about calling the New York State Bar Association, starting the process of reinstating his law license fully. Maybe opening a practice. Not a big firm. Something small, focused on people who couldn't afford the Malcolm Briggses of the world. His phone rang. "Victoria. Did you see Chen's email?" "Yeah, it's really happening. Daniel, I want to hire you, officially, to represent Hale Technologies in whatever comes next. Lawsuits, regulatory issues, all of it." "Victoria, I'm a janitor with a rusty law license. You're the best attorney I've ever seen, and you're the only one who believed in me when no one else would. So yes or no?" Daniel looked around his tiny apartment. The desk covered in files. The photo of Rebecca. The yellow legal pad he'd used to save a woman's life. "Let me think about it." "Don't think too long. I'm rebuilding fast." She hung up. Daniel sat in the darkness, listening to Emma breathe in the other room, feeling the weight of possibility settling over him. 7 years. 7 years of penance, of hiding, of punishing himself for a mistake he couldn't undo. But Rebecca was still gone. The guilt was still there. Running hadn't changed that. The only thing that had changed was him finally choosing to stop. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to a number he hadn't called in years. His old law partner, the one who'd tried to talk him out of quitting. It rang 4 times. Then, "Daniel? Is that really you? Hey, Marcus, it's me. I saw the trial, saw you win. Man, I didn't think you still had it in you." "Neither did I." Daniel paused. "I'm thinking about coming back. Not to the firm. Something different. Something smaller. But I wanted to ask, if I did, would you help me get set up? Refer some clients? Give me advice? That kind of thing." "Are you kidding? I'd do backflips to have you back in the game. You were always the best of us." "I wasn't. I was arrogant. You were young. We all were. But you learned. That's what matters." They talked for 20 minutes, Daniel feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope? Maybe. or purpose, or just the simple realization that he didn't have to keep punishing himself forever. When he hung up, he walked to the window. Outside, the city sprawled endlessly, millions of people fighting their own battles, making their own mistakes, trying their own redemption arcs. He was just one of them, not special, not heroic, just a man who'd fallen and was trying to stand back up. His phone buzzed one more time, text from an unknown number. "You won. Congratulations. But know this, we're still watching, we're still powerful, and next time you won't be so lucky." Daniel stared at the message for a long moment. Then he deleted it, blocked the number, and set down his phone. Let them watch. Let them threaten. They'd thrown everything at Victoria and lost. They tried to intimidate him and failed. Whatever came next, he'd face it. Not as a janitor hiding from his past, but as an attorney willing to fight. The next morning, he woke to Emma jumping on the bed. "Daddy, you're on TV!" He stumbled to the living room, turned on the news. The story was everywhere. FBI raids on Titan Energy offices. David Park arrested at his home. Marcus Webb detained at the airport trying to flee to Singapore. A massive corporate conspiracy unraveling in real time. And there, on every channel, was footage from the trial. Daniel, in his coveralls, arguing before the jury. Victoria wiping away tears as the verdict was read. The moment when David Park invoked the Fifth and destroyed his own credibility. Jessica Brennan's byline appeared on a ProPublica exclusive. How a janitor turned lawyer exposed the biggest energy conspiracy in decades. Daniel's phone rang constantly. Other news outlets wanting interviews, potential clients who'd seen the trial, law schools asking him to speak. He ignored most of it. But when Victoria called at 10 and asked him to come to her office, he went. Hale Technologies' headquarters was mostly empty now, a skeleton crew keeping the lights on. Victoria met him in the lobby, looking exhausted but determined. "I wanted you to see something." She led him to her office, pulled up a presentation on her computer. "I've been working on this all night, a plan to rebuild. New investors, new manufacturing partners, new board members I can actually trust. It's ambitious, maybe crazy, but I think it can work." Daniel scrolled through the slides. It was impressive, detailed, real. "You're serious about this?" "Completely. Hale Technologies isn't dead. We had a setback. We lost 2 years. But the technology still works. The mission still matters." She turned to him. "I need a general counsel. Someone who understands what we're up against. Someone who won't sell me out the first time things get difficult." "Victoria, don't say no yet. Just think about it. You could do real good here. Help build something that actually changes the world." Daniel looked out at her office window at the city. Somewhere out there, Emma was at school. Somewhere, Karen was probably reading about the trial and wondering if he'd lost his mind. Somewhere, Rebecca's grave sat quiet, waiting for visits he still struggled to make. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But I need to figure some things out first. About who I am now. About what kind of lawyer I want to be." "Take your time. The offer stands." He left the building, walked to a coffee shop, sat by the window watching people pass. Normal people with normal problems, not fighting conspiracies or facing prison. He envied them for a moment, then realized he didn't. Not really, because for the first time in 7 years, he felt alive. He felt useful. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he deserved a second chance. His phone buzzed. Email from the New York State Bar Association confirming receipt of his reinstatement application. It would take months to process, but the wheels were turning. Another email. This one from a small nonprofit. "Mr. Reeves, we work with wrongfully convicted individuals seeking exoneration. We saw your work in the Hale case. Would you consider taking on pro bono work for clients who can't afford representation?" Daniel read it twice. Wrongful convictions. People like Victoria, except without the resources to fight back. People who needed someone willing to challenge the system on their behalf. He typed back, "Yes, send me the cases. I'll review them." Within an hour, 3 case files arrived in his inbox. A man serving 20 years for a robbery he didn't commit. A woman convicted on false testimony from a corrupt cop. A teenager sentenced as an adult based on a confession that was clearly coerced. Daniel opened the first file and started reading. 2 weeks later, he stood in front of a judge arguing for a new trial for the wrongly convicted man. The prosecutor fought hard, but Daniel fought harder. He'd spent 14 days reviewing evidence, interviewing witnesses, finding the holes in the original case. The judge granted the new trial. The man, who'd spent 8 years in prison, cried when he heard. "Thank you," he said to Daniel afterward. "Thank you for seeing me, for believing me." "Everyone deserves someone who believes them," Daniel said. "That's all I'm doing." But it was more than that, and he knew it. He was trying to balance the scales, trying to make up for Stephen Merrick and the damage he'd caused, trying to prove to himself that law could be a force for good, not just a game the powerful played. 6 months after the trial, Victoria called with news. Hale Technologies is back. We've secured new funding, rebuilt the manufacturing process, and we're launching our first commercial battery next month, and it's all because you gave me a chance to fight. You gave yourself that chance. I just held the door open. Well, the offer still stands. General counsel position. You'd be perfect for it. Daniel thought about it. He'd taken on 12 pro bono cases in 6 months, won 8, lost 4. He'd rebuilt relationships with Emma and Karen. He'd started seeing a therapist to work through the guilt and grief he'd been carrying for 7 years. He'd even visited Rebecca's grave, finally, and talked to her about everything that had happened. I appreciate it, Victoria, I really do. But I think my path is different now. I'm helping people who can't help themselves. That's where I need to be. I understand, but if you ever change your mind, call me. I will. He hung up, looked at the stack of case files on his desk. A new office. Small but professional, in a building that definitely wasn't prestigious, but had good light and reasonable rent. A sign on the door that read Daniel Reeves, attorney at law. Emma came by after school sometimes, did her homework at the spare desk while he worked. Karen had softened toward him, even suggested they try family dinners once a week. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was something. A slow rebuilding of trust. One evening, as he was closing up the office, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Reeves? My name is Angela Torres. I saw your name in an article about wrongful convictions. My brother is in prison for a murder he didn't commit. No one will help us. We don't have money, but I thought maybe... Tell me about your brother's case. She did. For 30 minutes, she laid out the details. Bad police work, coerced witnesses. Evidence that was ignored. The familiar pattern of a system more interested in closing cases than finding truth. Send me everything you have, Daniel said. I'll review it. If there's a case, I'll take it. You will? Just like that? Just like that. Why? You don't know us. Daniel looked at the photo on his desk, not Rebecca this time, but one of Emma, smiling, happy, whole. Because everyone deserves someone willing to fight for them, especially when the fight seems impossible. Thank you so much. She hung up. Daniel sat in the quiet office, feeling the weight of the responsibility he'd taken on. It was heavy, it always would be, but it was the right weight, the weight of purpose, not punishment. He locked up, walked to his car, drove home. Emma was waiting, already in her pajamas, ready for their nightly ritual of reading before bed. They were working through a fantasy series together, taking turns with chapters. Did you save anyone today, Daddy? She asked as they settled in. I'm trying, baby. I'm trying. You will. You're good at it. He kissed her forehead, started reading, and as the story unfolded of heroes and villains, of battles fought and won and lost, he thought about his own story, about Rebecca and Stephen Merrick and 7 years of hiding, about Victoria Hale and corrupt executives and a conspiracy that almost succeeded, about the fragile, imperfect, necessary work of seeking justice in a world designed to resist it. He'd made mistakes, terrible ones, mistakes that cost lives and destroyed his own. But he'd also learned that running from those mistakes didn't erase them. Only facing them did. Only choosing to do better, one case at a time, one client at a time, one day at a time. The janitor's uniform was gone now, hung in his closet as a reminder of where he'd been. The courtroom had become home again, not a place of terror, but of possibility, and the guilt that had defined him for 7 years had transformed into something else. Not gone, it would never be gone, but integrated, part of who he was, part of what drove him to fight. Emma fell asleep halfway through the chapter. Daniel finished it anyway, his voice quiet in the darkening room, telling a story about courage and redemption and the long road between the two. Outside, the city continued its endless churn. Somewhere, people were being wrongly accused. Somewhere, powerful interests were crushing the innocent. Somewhere, the system was failing in all the ways systems fail. And somewhere, a lawyer in a small office was reading case files, looking for the weak points, the inconsistencies, the threads that could unravel injustice. Daniel Reeves wasn't a hero. He was just a man who'd fallen hard, learned from it, and decided to stand back up. Some days he stood straight. Some days he stumbled. But he kept standing, kept fighting, kept believing that the law, for all its flaws, could still be a tool for good in the right hands. It wasn't redemption. Not completely. Redemption was probably impossible after what he'd done, but it was something close, something real, something worth waking up for each morning and trying again. He closed the book, turned off the light, and sat in the darkness listening to his daughter breathe. Tomorrow, he'd file motions for Angela Torres's brother. Tomorrow, he'd fight another uphill battle against a system that rarely gave ground. Tomorrow, he'd do the work that Rebecca had done in her own way, helping the helpless, standing with the abandoned, refusing to accept that injustice was inevitable. But tonight, he just sat, grateful for second chances, grateful for the jury that had believed, grateful for Victoria's courage and Emma's love and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could spend the rest of his life making up for the beginning. The photo of Rebecca still sat on his desk in the office, her smile frozen in time. He'd never stopped missing her, never stopped regretting the choices that led to her death, but he'd also never stopped trying to honor her memory by being the man she'd believed he could be. A man who fought for people. A man who stood up when no one else would. A man who pushed a mop when he had to, but wore a suit when it mattered. A man who knew that justice wasn't given. It was earned, case by case, fight by fight, until the powerful learned they couldn't always win, and the powerless learned they weren't always alone. Daniel Reeves, attorney at law, stood and walked to the window. Out there in the darkness, somewhere, someone needed help. Someone was waiting for a janitor in coveralls to walk into a courtroom and say, "I'll defend you." And when that moment came, he'd be ready.